Hello, everyone. Welcome to the GLORIO Chat, the best anime podcast on the internet. You know, I watched Gridman Universe last night, which we'll talk about. We'll get our thoughts and opinions, and we have opinions on that in a few minutes. But before we get into all of that, I wanted to just put out there, someone please find a way for me to get a Gridman Don't Cry t-shirt. It doesn't have to be official. You can put it on Redbubble or something. I don't care. I mean, hell, I'm kind of tempted to bust out Illustrator and make one myself.
Yeah, I'd buy one.
Maybe I'll risk putting it up there. Please don't sue me.
I feel like my memory of New York is that there are a billion bootleg T-shirt shops that will print anything, but I'm not sure how up to date that impression is, given I was last there like 18 years ago.
I will say I used to have access to some of those tools back in my old job, but that was 10 years ago.
They were if they were running raffles or something for shirts, for Gridman Don't Cry shirts at the premiere, the launch, and they said it's under planning to sell it as a royal shirt or something. But that was in April. So
yeah, I'm not holding my breath.
I mean, that we all know that just equals in Japanese media parlance. That means that they will open up a pop-up store.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They will open up a pop-up store that is selling a small run of 50 shirts between the hours of 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. at one department store in Tokyo on a single day.
The mall under Tokyo Tower or whatever.
Yeah.
Since the last time I was on this podcast, I have been to an anime pop-up store. So, yeah. But it was in Hong Kong, so not quite the same.
Reminds me, I did not go to the ramen chain when they were doing the Yakuza stuff.
Yeah,
because I'm not going into the city anyway.
I'm just saying I have not wanted a piece of anime clothing this much since the Doro Hedoro Hungry Bug.
You were going to say the Doro Hedoro shirts, right?
No, the jacket that was the delivery, the Chinese, cheap nylon Chinese delivery.
Let me tell you about cheap nylon Chinese jackets in Hong Kong, Joe. I was going to reference the one I would also reference, which is the Space Dandy t-shirt drop kicks at Space Bullbuster.
Oh, yeah. That is also an all-timer.
An all-timer, yeah.
Well, this is the GLORIO Chat, your go-to place for discussing hard-to-obtain anime shirts.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, we'll get into talking about Gridman in a second. Let's just introduce everybody. I'm Jel. I'm joined by Iro.
I'm still here. I'm not dead yet.
Still with us. We're joined by G.
I have to make a public apology for last podcast. You see, my performance in the previous podcast was only 30% of my intended vision. If only I had been given more time, if only the project had been scheduled, if only the podcast had been scheduled better, maybe the world would have gotten to have seen, my fully intended vision for the podcast. But I apologize for that, and I promise to do better next time. I promise to work myself to the bone even more next time.
But do you think you can defeat the Iron Chef?
That is also a topic we'll be getting into later in this podcast.
Still on the subliminal attempts to turn this podcast into an Iron Chef podcast.
It's just that's the type of shit these challengers always say. So how do you think you did?
Yeah.
And maybe it's a cultural thing because that was a tweet by one Enrico Nobili, who was the animation director for I believe the latest episode of Jujutsu Kaisen.
For sure.
Well, speaking of things we'll get into later.
Yeah. We will definitely have some things to say about that production in a bit. And we're joined by Zig.
Man, I bought so many Gunpla in Hong Kong, and by so many I mean 3, but I had the opportunity to buy so many Gunpla in Hong Kong.
What percentage of your luggage space was taken up by Gunpla on your return home?
I mean, we bought another suitcase to put the Gunpla in. So
hell yeah.
Yeah.
My brother bought some as well. But
nice.
Yes, there was a lot of Gunpla.
Last time I was in Hong Kong, which was in the mid-aughts, when I was still fairly young, but I have a distinct memory of walking into some shop that was next door to the hotel and seeing the like perfect grade Gundam wing
Yep,
with the
I
big old box
that's the one.
wings
I can
outstretched.
confirm that one perfect grade wing Gundam is still kicking around.
Yeah,
all
yeah.
my stores.
Like, I had no
Yes.
idea what
20 years
Gundam
later.
was, right? But I was just like, wow, that robot's got angel wings. That is sick.
Yeah.
Yes, you can still walk into many, well, not many, but you can still walk into a bunch of toy stores in Hong Kong and buy perfect grade Wing Zero if you know where to
Yes.
look. So,
Mhm.
The modern replacement for that seems to be the what is it, the high grade God, was it that
I
that
saw
that
so many
Neo
high.
Zeong, yeah.
Yeah.
I did not see the Neo Zeong. I saw so many high grade news and
Oh
Suzamis.
sure, I mean those are
Yeah.
also popular,
And
but
the
I just
high-grade
meant the
not
Neo
high
Zeong is
grade,
kind of
real
the
grade.
new,
Yeah.
it's like the new giant ass box
Yes.
that
The
takes
Neo
up
Zeong that has a presence on the con circuit for like collaborative build panels.
Yes.
yeah.
Everybody gets a different fucking arm to put together.
Yes.
I did.
And an hour. Yeah.
Because the thing is like the size of a small child.
Yeah.
I will say that the Gunpla that seemed to be the centerpiece of the vast majority of stores there was that perfect grade Strike Freedom, which is very
Yeah.
impressive, but it's also from Gundam Seed. Also, I visited maybe a dozen, maybe 15 different Gunpla stores, and I found 3 kits of Hoshido Fumina from Build Fighters, 1 kit of Sei's mum from Build Fighters, and 0 kits from Turn A Gundam.
Look, man, they don't understand. They don't know how to appreciate
Literally 0.
true art.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Right.
that's my Hong Kong segment over.
Excellent. Well,
Mhm.
well, unfortunately, we can't turn this into a Gunpla episode, so
Not this time.
we do have anime to talk about. And as
Unfortunately.
mentioned, we can kick things off talking about the Gridman Universe movie, which hit, well, I'm not going to say it hit any legal sources per se.
United
But
Airlines a few weeks ago.
yes.
We all took a
yes, we all booked a flight. Yep.
We're actually
And-
recording this in person.
Yeah. We all
In
took a
person
flight
over the
so we could
internet.
watch it on the plane. And you know, we would never pirate anime that we'd be stealing. So yeah, Gridman Universe is the like, I guess, I mean, I'm not an expert on this, but I'm assuming this is inspired by other tokusatsu type crossover movies, right? A little bit, like, because it's merging.
As Akuge's put it, serious Power Rangers previous team up energy.
Yeah, because it does, while it is titled Gridman Universe, it does basically smash the Gridman and Dynazenon worlds together so that all the robots can combine all at the same time in ways that I couldn't follow at some point anymore.
Worlds collide.
You know, and okay, let me start. I'll try to start on some neutral ground here because I think we all probably enjoyed the movie to some extent.
Absolutely.
There were definitely some really cool moments, some big movie spectacle type of moments. I think we were all cheering for Giga Chad Yomogi, and and in some ways it was kind of fun revisiting the two anime that I think we've all very much liked to different degrees, but we all liked both series, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yes.
But I guess overall, though, how did you guys feel about the movie? When we can go around and get everybody's opinion, because I feel like we all may have slightly different opinions on this, but anybody can feel free to jump in first. But
I mean, I think for me personally, right, like Gridman Universe very much feels like Akira Amamiya's Victory Lap, right? Like this is the capstone to the Gridman saga that he started like nearly 10 years ago with his original Gridman short that he did for
Boys Infinite Great Hero for the Animator Expo.
Yes, that one, right? Like it's I cannot help but like be enamored by like the journey he has gone on here, because it is every creator's dream to like take their like weird obscure pet project that only they care about and just get to like develop it over the course of a decade. And it's very much what Akira Amamiya has done, and because of like just how good of a job he did with Gridman and Dynazenon, you know, I feel like he has earned the Gridman universe. He has earned the right to just, like have fun and smash these characters together in fun ways. And like, is it a fan service movie? Definitely. But I think he has earned the right to like give us that fan service. I think, just on a pure emotional level, I came away from this movie like very satisfied. I really loved a lot of the character stuff they did in this movie, like as kind of slight as some of it is just because of the sheer size of the cast. I think this is just one of those movies where like, and I think because obviously, I think some of our opinions kind of differ on this. I think for me personally, it's like, yes, if you try to like break down this movie objectively, like, oh, it's, what is its plot structure? How does it escalate? Do the characters grow as people by the end? It's like, I think it's easy to like nitpick a movie like Gridman Universe to death, but like as a piece of work, right? As a, as a, as the song says, right, human love is more psychedelic than robot love, is more dramatic than right. It is a big it is a big display of love. Like that is what this movie is. It is a passion project. It is filled with love and human passion, and as a result, it like ape brain activated. I hoot and holler when hold on here, when Super Dragon King combined Superman Rogue Kaiser Gridman shows up. I'm like, fuck yeah, like that's of course we're gonna do this, right?
Featuring Dante from the Devil May Cry series,
and Knuckles,
and
like,
Knuckles.
It is that movie, like wholeheartedly, and for me, I can bring myself to love it for that.
Iro, how did you feel about it?
Fairly similarly. Like, I did not have exactly high expectations for this because I think Gridman, I didn't have high expectations for Dynazenon at the time because I was like, wow, Gridman is like a perfect good self-contained story that ends perfectly and I don't need to see any more. And then they made Dynazenon and I was like, you sure about this? Sure, maybe I'll follow up to Gridman? And then I thought Dynazenon was perhaps even better in its character work and whatnot. And so, and that also wraps up in like an incredibly good self-contained way. And so this movie, I was like, okay. When they announced it and whatnot. And then, so I'm going into it, I'm like, all right, these two shows wrapped up perfectly on their own. This is just going to be the dumb crossover. We smash the toys together and fight the sudden new villain who has appeared. Right, and
I don't even know who the villain was, to be honest.
I can't even name him.
It's not important.
Like,
yeah,
it's like I was reminded a lot of Garo Divine Flame, which was like the sequel movie follow up to Garo the Animation, Garo the Car Seal Flames, which is a very similar format of all of our character stuff was done in the show. Let's have a monster of the week, but bigger, where all of the characters have to show up again. Your favorite characters who may have passed away or gone in the main series, we come up with a dumb excuse for them to show up again to wrap up one or two emotional threads that did not get a chance to resolve, and then they fight the big bad guy, and there's a lot of explosions, and then we leave. And it's like, I didn't expect necessarily any big character arcs or change or anything of that's like super meaningful that we may have gotten in Gridman or Dynazenon, the TV shows. I just thought it would be a big explosion fest, and that's basically what it was. And I went, cool. I had a really good time. I loved seeing all these characters again. There's a few really good character moments, despite what I just said. And yeah, I had a good time.
Yeah, and I broadly agree with what you guys are saying as far as what was like enjoyable about the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, and Zig, I'm going to turn it to you. But I think our opinions probably more align on a little more negative about it. But
Sure.
what? How did you feel about it?
I think it's interesting that specifically G said, and I'm not calling you out for this, G, it's just an interesting turn of phrase. He said that this is a big movie which doesn't hold up well to nitpicking, and I would argue the exact opposite. I think the small parts of this movie are terrific. The little scenes, the moments of characterization, the jokes, the comfortableness that you feel in the characters is great. The problem is the big picture, and the big picture is this is not a movie about anything. It is entirely vapid.
Right. It's like about Gridman plus Dynazedon.
Yes.
Okay. See, so what I mean.
Now, hold on.
Go
I gave you your time, so give me mine. Okay. The thing about Gridman and Dynazedon, which makes them interesting and special shows, is that they are dedicated to exploring and uncovering their characters and their cast, and taking the characters and therefore ourselves on a journey and growth and evolution through the story. This movie is not about that. Nobody changes or grows or has a life experience in this movie aside from blowing up a bunch of shit, which is cool, but it's not really what I came to those shows for, you know. And I think this movie actually, in some cases, quite severely damages some of the impact of those shows by bringing characters back from the dead and bringing characters into the story when they had completed their arcs. You know, is it like, this is kind of the encapsulation of the problem. Is it cool to see Akane again? Absolutely, it's great. I love her. She has a cool new costume. She has massive boobs. It's awesome. But it's a fundamental betrayal of the ending of Gridman, which was the dream is over. You know, I don't need to see more of that story. And it's the same thing with Gourmet here. You know, I think there's a great scene. There's one great scene with him and Yomogi where they kind of, you know, in that awkward way talk about how now he's back. But you would need an entire TV series to explore that emotion properly. And here it's kind of just tossed off after 90 seconds. And the net result is I don't really care about anything that happens in this movie. And I think it's a spectacular visual and audio and display with some great writing, and it's about as thin as a sheet of paper.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, G, if you want to clarify
your rebuttal, Mr. G.
Yeah.
well, I just got to clarify when you say that, like, when I said that, like, oh, this is a movie that can be easily nitpicked. See, to me, all those things you said, those are the small picture things to me. Plot, character development, completely irrelevant. No, the big moments, see, here's the thing. For me, the big moments are the things that you liked, right? It is the quiet conversations. It is Haas and Utsumi having their, like, one kind of on-the-sly conversation, you know, while everything else is going on, right? Those are the things that are, like, paradoxically the small moments that are the big moments. Like, you know, I never came into this movie thinking, this movie will unravel the truth about the Gridman
The other
universe.
thing as well is that there's a large, like, the whole point of Dynazedon was that it set up a number of intriguing plot threads that were not resolved in the show because we had faith that they would be resolved eventually. And you could argue, and I did in my write-up, that the answer to those questions is not actually important to that show, but the answer here still feels like a cop-out. Like, the bad guy is an amalgamation of all the bad guys we fought before, is literally the laziest possible bad guy you could come up with. It's literally like the most stock villain that you could possibly
right. But like, we just watched freaking King Oger meets Kyoryuger, and the boss of that crossover is all of the villains from Kyoryuger have combined into one villain. Right? Like,
I mean, if you're going to argue that King Ojo is as good as SSSS Gridman,
no,
I would really like to see that argument.
I guess I'm like, I think like narratively, the crossover movie, like this was all it could have been, right?
Right, and maybe it's fire on me for expecting more than that, but I have been primed by those shows to expect something better, and I did expect something better, and therefore it is a disappointment to me.
You know, it's funny they did the amalgamation villain thing, and yet the only characters that didn't come back were the bad guys from Dynazenon.
Yeah, well, they're dead. They're
they may make like a cameo.
What does death mean in this movie at this point, right? I mean,
okay, fine. Well, they're dead in the sense that they did not get a post-credit scene where they're hinted at still being alive, like Galba did.
Bring back Mujina, damn it!
Yes, bring back the evil woman. We know.
Okay, so you guys all watched. You guys all watched this a couple weeks ago, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm coming fresh. I'm coming fresh off of watching this last night. So I'm my takes might be a little hotter here.
Okay.
Most of this movie, I was bored to tears.
Oh man!
I don't know if you guys are remembering how much of the middle of the movie is trying to go into detailed explanation of what is happening with Gridman.
Yeah, the actual plot, for what it's worth, is
and that's not. Oh, go on. That's not a small amount of screen time. That is arguably the majority of the, at least the middle of the movie, is all dedicated to let's info dump. We're going to try so hard to justify how this whole crossover thing happened, and a lot of the movie goes into. And I feel like, I feel like over time you might, because I know my brain just glossed over all of that stuff, but I feel like over time I would just forget that and only remember some of the cool stuff, which is why I'm kind of mentioning if I was recording this like maybe 3 weeks from now, I would probably not be thinking about that as much.
I think I kind of gave a lot of that stuff a pass because there's fun, weird shit like the teams hanging out in school together and building costumes for the play and stuff.
Oh, I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about literally...
After Auntie shows up and then they spend 10 minutes saying, you see, Gridman is now the universe, and the universe contains all of Gridman, and you're just creations of Gridman.
See, I guess to me, it's like, that was like, I mean, yes, it was like, that part is probably one of the weaker parts of the movie, but it didn't feel that long to me, I guess, because...
Oh, trust me, I just watched the movie like 12 hours ago.
No, you are probably right. It's just like, I just
it was a lot of that movie.
Like, I'm probably misestimating, but like in my brain, it's like, I don't know. The first third of that movie is like all the like fucking slow paced Gridman shit, right? Oh no, will Yuta confess to the girl, and then like. I don't know, some like Gridman Universe stuff happens, and then Grid Knight starts kicking the shit out of a kaiju, and
so trying to press some sort of like thematic thing of all of these. After the end of Gridman establishes that all of these characters are Kane's Sims file, and now that after this movie has established that all of Dynazenon is Gridman's Sims file, why should you give a shit about these?
Yeah, all I'm saying is the middle, like, at least half an hour to 40 minutes of the movie, I was playing Grand Blue Fantasy on my phone and not really paying attention.
Yeah, but you're doing that whenever you do anything, though.
Well, more so than usual. I was doing harder content than usual during.
between fight number 3 and fight number 4, which lasts the last 30 minutes of the movie, right? Basically,
I think I'm kind of in the middle here because I agree with your criticism, Joe, but also I consider it like, is the plot ludicrous? Absolutely, but also like that's such a minor problem compared to my actual issues with the movie.
Oh no,
like,
I don't care. I don't care about the plot. I'm saying it took up too much of the movie itself.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like if that was like 5 minutes of the movie, fine, but like. It felt like most of the middle of the movie, and
Rika says we have to include 10 to 20 minutes of human drama in between the kaiju fight.
Yeah, I was gonna say like I might just be Utsumi pilled here, but I feel like this movie leans heavily in favor of the fights to the plot. Like that last hour is just. It's just a fight, right? It's just a non-stop kaiju battle,
and I kind of didn't care. That's the thing.
Well, okay, so I mean, and then the other thing is like I never really liked the fights in Gridman Xenon that much anyway either. So that even that was not really doing much for me. Like, yeah, there's some cool like moments, but after a while, my eyes gloss over as I'm trying to follow whatever. It's like,
I love Dynaxenon's like continued use,
but it's always the like, okay, we know what's going to happen. Gridman's going to get his ass kicked. He's going to power up,
of course,
kick the monster's ass.
Yeah.
The monster's going to power up.
How it works.
He's going to kick Gridman's ass. But
that's what these are, right?
That's fine if you want to do that for like 2 minutes every week in a 20-minute episode.
Yeah, for about 4
but
minutes.
But after a while, I'm just like, all right, we know what's going to happen.
See,
they're going to
so
they're going to combine
me, right,
the other thing with the other thing, and that's just.
Okay, so here's the thing, right? Like, you're completely right, and here's the thing. For a TV show with realistic budgets and planning, I get it. I'm like, oh, yeah, we get a couple minutes of robot fighting, and I'm fine. I can live with it. I'm like, yeah, that's fair, I guess. But here's the thing. Again, maybe I'm just Utsumi pilled. I've always wanted more. I've always been like, oh, that small plate was good, but, what if I just ate like 3 king crabs in a row? Like, just once. Just let me do it once.
What if you stepped on a cake?
That's
exactly right.
I mean, that's
what if you just gave me an hour straight of this shit.
Yeah, I mean that's the kind of thing I'm willing to chalk up to opinion. That's fine. But for me personally, like, it wasn't really doing anything for me. And then the final thing I will add, and trust me, I did enjoy some of this movie. Like, there were moments, like I love the characters themselves. I love the character work. I like the parts where they're hanging out at school preparing for the play and stuff. Like, that's always what I've liked the most out of these series, and that's why I was saying in our chat last night when I was watching, like, the main takeaway I've been reminded that I like Dynaxenon a lot more than Gridman.
Oh yeah,
but
all of those
I guess the final piece of it is like, I understand why they had to make Yuta the main character, and I don't like Yuta, but
because he is like the one sort of unresolved thing about Gridman,
and
they made him a plot line from the show.
Yeah, and they made him made him the like emotional. Him and his like crush on Rika are like the emotional center of this movie, and I hate all of it.
Yeah, and that's like the most, possibly the dumbest look of the movie, right? It's like,
we all know Rika is in love with Akane, and that shouldn't have happened. But
I mean, that plot in the show was only good because it literally ended with Akane deciding the solution was to murder everyone. Like, it's so tired. Like, it's so. And the thing is also, we don't know Yuta as a character, so this movie is
just the generic protagonist man, right?
Yeah, I mean, even for plot reasons, the Yuta and Rika that we have in this movie are people we don't know, right? Like, it made me not care, like kind of like what Zig was saying, whereas like I just was not invested in, and again, I don't need a complicated plot. I don't need deep relationships or whatever. I just want to feel something, and I wasn't really connected with this movie at all. Is other than the few like bits of nostalgia I had for the TV series when they were all hanging out, and anytime I did enjoy, like, anytime the next cameo started and like, hey, they're back, like, that was fun. Like,
I think I get where you guys are coming from. I do, and I think just for me, it's like, I think Amamiya, like, despite this despite everything we've just said about this being a big gratuitous crossover movie, I also just respect Amamiya's like surprising amount of like commitment and like in some ways restraint to some of these like character moments in the way they play out, like, and how much stronger that makes them, because like Zig, you were just saying like, oh, I didn't really need Akane to come back, and I broadly agree,
either,
but she does anyway, and I think Amamiya completely nails her return. Like, I think she is used just enough and in just the right ways to like feel emotionally fulfilling. Like, did she need to come back? No. But is that last conversation between her and Auntie not maybe the emotional climax of that entire movie? Like, completely. Like, okay, see, I completely disagree. That moment is like the moment in this movie that hit me harder
That like
than
just
anything else.
that moment like justifies them bringing Akane back to me, right?
Yes, that is
because she does not like. Yes, you're right that she completed her emotional thing and has no need to return to her Sims file for herself, right? But like she doesn't go back for herself. She goes back
for
to
them. She goes back for Auntie, a character who did not get his emotional closure in Gridman.
But he closed himself. That's the thing. The character we see in Dynazenon is fundamentally a largely complete character. By making him need to go back to Akane, it lessens his character.
No, because
he never needed to, right?
He never needed to.
It's like Yomogi never needed to be Gamma again.
Go back to Gamma. That's
kind
of the whole point, right? Is that these characters did complete their arcs, but also, if somebody you deeply cared about and you thought you'd never see again just showed up, would you not desire on some level, like,
this is not reality. Akane did not show up. The writers engineered this scenario.
Obviously, but
yes, but what I'm saying is that, like, of course, Auntie did not need to see Akane again, but the writers felt that it was important that they have a scene together, and the scene together is pretty good, honestly. But I liked him better when, like, his memories of Akane were sealed away. Like, that one moment in Dynazenon where she appears in the background of his dream is enough to tell me leagues about the character.
Yeah, I think this is the classic when you do a sequel that doesn't need to happen.
Right.
It's like, I think we all agreed this movie didn't have to be made.
No.
Like, with the TV series that are standing on their own.
Like,
and it's like, if you are going to make the movie, this is a pretty good job of doing it. I think where me and Zig are at is like, I actually didn't want this movie to be like, I didn't want these things to happen.
My perspective is more like, well, if the suits are saying you must make this, and like this movie must exist as a crossover thing, like the format in which it exists necessitates some of these problems existing as well.
I'm not even that cynical.
About it. Our critique should not be bound by the circumstances of a work's creation.
Oh, I don't know.
I do not subscribe to this theory that Amamiya was chained to his desk and forced to make.
Oh no,
I don't think that's the case either.
I don't think we're being literal about that.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like I was saying, this is a crossover movie / sequel thing, and as one of those, it must do the things that the format requires, and anything above that is just a bonus. And I don't think it should exist or needs to exist.
Yes, I think what I've arrived at is, like, if you're going to do this kind of movie, like, I don't know if I would have changed anything if you're going to do a movie like this. My thing is, like, I just didn't want this to happen, basically.
Yeah, I'm kind of where Jell
is. I don't know. That is such a that is such a negative take on
I feel like it opened, like, you're digging up the grave here. Like, you're digging somebody up out of their grave here. We put it to bed. We went to the funeral. We said our goodbyes, and this is the post-death Tupac Shakur album of Gridman shows.
I really think that is way too unfair. Like, I am glad let me be clear. I am glad Gridman Universe exists. I am glad I watched it. I think it is a tremendous piece of work, and if we have to agree to disagree, then that's fine. But I just do not want it to be said here in this podcast that the GLORIO chat's take on
yes, of course, we are not making a universal statement. We're not making a universal statement for everybody's opinion.
I am personally very happy that this movie came to being.
I mean, I think even among let's say we are roughly 2 and 2 on sides of the line, I think I don't completely agree with Jell, and if you'll forgive me for speaking for you, Iro, I don't think you completely agree with G, right? We are on different variations and different critiques here, I think that, I mean, look, I had fun watching the movie. I certainly don't hate it. But I think, we were looking for different things from it, and it delivered that. It delivered those things to some of us and not to others of us, and that's fine.
Also, I didn't even get to finish my thought with Akane because, it's not just the anti stuff that they completely nail. Like, that Amamiya had the restraint to, like, even, like, dangle Rika and Akane meeting one more time. And for Rika to literally say to the audience, no, I'm good. I've already said everything I've needed to.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, he sure did, didn't he?
yeah, and what I'm saying is that is Amamiya himself recognizing that, one of these characters can still get, like, a little fan service, emotional conclusion, and the other one doesn't need it. Like, in the same movie. Like,
I mean, to me, what that's saying is that Amamiya said this sequence was completely unnecessary because we already said everything that
nobody owns
said.
Gridman.
Yeah,
I'll say the number one moment in the movie that put the biggest smile on my face is Yomogi jumps into Yume's arms and Superman carries him.
Oh yes, it's
yes.
really
As they swing through the sky
That's
or whatever.
right.
And
I mean, if you want to talk about my favorite moment in this movie, then it's Yomogi just full on, like, caveman style saying to Yume's face, "No, you are my woman now."
The Virgin Yuta versus the Chad
Yes.
Yomogi.
If there's one thing we can all agree on, I think we all enjoyed that aspect of it.
Yomogi just be like, "What are you talking about? You're part of my family." And I'm like, holy shit. Like, dude, you're like, what, like 16?
Yeah.
I thought it was
good.
very funny that that Galma, when now he's Dynarex, still says something beam for his.
And that's what Yume called it.
Yeah.
It's funny because I've been taking people who had never seen the show through it, and the very first time she says something beam, he tries to, like, correct her with its actual name. He's like, "No, it's the penetrator gun." And then for the rest of the show, they just keep saying something beam.
That's very good.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
critics are sharply divided over the recent Gridman Universe.
Baby Don.
I think if you I should probably point out, because we haven't talked about it so long, I also just didn't like those shows as much as you guys liked them overall either, as much as I did enjoy them. So there's varying opinions. I think if you did enjoy the TV show series, though, I mean, you probably should watch this, though. Like, I'm
absolutely.
Look, as far as I'm concerned, Akira Amamiya has not missed yet. All right, Inferno Cop, Ninja Slayer, Gridman, Dyna Xenon. This man is batting 1,000.
The opening to Project X Zone on the Nintendo 3DS.
Yeah.
Yes, he's masterpiece.
Well, I do love Amamiya's directing style, and I am looking forward to him doing something that is not Gridman at some point in the future.
Oh, I think that's something we can all agree on.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, look, you know what? I'm just gonna speak it into the world because I think the cynicism of, like, capitalism means there's a non-0% chance. If Amamiya's next project is another Toku thing, I think we'll all still watch it.
Yes.
But also, I think we'll all be, like, kind of quietly disappointed that Amamiya fell to the same trap that Anno did of becoming, like, entombed by their one great success. I really hope Amamiya can break out of that, but...
Yeah, well, I'm sure
what matters. Inferno Cop.
I'm sure as well as Gridman and Dyna Xenon may have done, they are not Evangelion, so that might not be a trap he has to fall into, but we'll
for
see.
Tsuburaya, they might be looking at Gridman and being like, "Oh, this is the most anyone has cared about an Ultraman related thing in, like, 20 years."
Ouch. Shin Ultraman was literally 2 years ago, dude.
Isn't it, like, the least notable of the Anno films?
No. Shin Kamen Rider is considerably less notable and made considerably less money.
Broadly, okay. I mean,
dude, Ultraman is big.
Ultraman's
literally and metaphorically.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
Well,
all right.
Let's move along then. We can put that aside now and move on to
a subject that everybody can agree on universally.
Another fun conversation with we haven't talked about Jujutsu Kaisen this season, but it is still going.
There hasn't been much to talk about the show itself,
other than wow, it looks really good, and then you go, oh right, at whose expense?
Did they like kill Gojo or something, or
no?
Take him out of the picture.
Put him in a box. they
Okay.
sealed him away or what have you.
Which is your excuse for like, oh no, everybody has to fight without the Gojo get out of jail free card.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess we haven't talked about it because we had new shows, and then there just hasn't been much to talk about.
The
Is
reason
that
we
fair?
haven't been talking about Jujutsu Kaisen is because Iro and I have like basically completely fallen out of love with this show. Like it, like all of the things that we liked about like the back half of season 1 have just been systematically wiped away by the
This is what I was waiting.
I could totally see how somebody else would look at what's happening now and be like, "What do you mean? These are all the same strength as the back half of season 1?" And I'd be like, "No, you're wrong," or I disagree. Rather,
and so. It's just like there wouldn't be much for us to talk about. There's a lot of very cool fights. There's a lot of women getting sidelined. There's a lot of
a lot of interesting new abilities and powers that don't matter.
Don't matter because as Iro and I have sort of been like working through, Jujutsu Kaisen's powers fulfill one half of the like what makes for a good shonen battle like set like discussion, which is like visually impressive, right? Like very flashy, visually impressive powers. But the other half of I think what makes for a good shonen power set is like, how do I put this? The like narrative or thematic clarity of those powers. Like what do they mean to the plot and what do they mean to the characters, right? Like Goku going Super Saiyan has great implications both narratively and visually, right? Like, what does it mean for Goku to become the legendary Super Saiyan? The thing that, like, drove Frieza to genocide the Saiyan race, right? Like, for him to become the living embodiment of Frieza's deep-seated fears is both visually cool because he transforms, but also narratively impactful. Jujutsu Kaisen completely fails in the latter, like in that latter area. Like it introduces all these very cool, visually impressive powers. There's a dude whose literal power is he can see things in keyframes. He can see things in 24 frames per second.
Yes, he can enforce 24 frames per second upon him and his enemy, and if they do not abide by 24 frames per second, they freeze for that second. But he knows how to move on ones.
Yes, that's literally his power.
He can move on the ones.
Yeah,
and it's great. And then it doesn't really amount to anything because I think he just gets killed right afterward, and it's like, oh, okay. And that's
perhaps this is a blunt metaphor for something.
And it just, so like, there's just nothing to emotionally compel us. Like we are watching. For reference, we were watching the two episodes that, we're kind of talking about here are Thunderclap Part 1 and Thunderclap Part 2, which my understanding is, like, metacontextually, this is, like, the big moment in Jujutsu Kaisen.
Joel, you watched enough of the show to know the bad guy sealed inside Yuji takes control and starts killing people.
Goes sicko mode,
Okay.
And it's very visually impressive. Like, there's no point in us giving like the breakdown, but it's just like it is undeniably
some stuff directly like referencing / inspired by Birdie the Mighty.
Yes, Rio Timo himself, right? Like like smeary, stylized fights, very cool, very kinetic.
Nice.
And yet, Iro and I are watching this, and we don't give a shit. We don't care. It's flashy. It's cool. It's just pretty lights. B, we are constantly haunted.
Oh, yes.
No. Continue, please.
Oh. I'm sorry. We are constantly haunted by the thought of like the human cost it took to make these episodes. And the real reason I think we want to bring up Jujutsu Kaisen on this podcast is there has been a lot of very public discussion online, both in Japan and in the West, about the working conditions at MAPPA, which it has been, let me be clear, it has been known for a while now that MAPPA pushes its crew pretty fucking hard. Like, this is
Yeah.
known. They take on too many projects. We have always said every year since, like, literally Garo.
Yeah. What?
Wow,
since, like,
Mappa's shown up a lot.
Yeah, like 2015 or some shit. Yeah.
Yeah,
We should
like,
also-
wow.
We should also probably clarify that they are pushing them hard by anime standards, an
Yes.
industry which is
Yes.
already infamous for pushing people incredibly hard.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Supposedly, what the Jujutsu Kaisen Zero movie,
Yes.
extremely successful film,
Very
supposedly
visually impressive.
was made in 4 months.
That's
4
absurd.
months.
So they are making just under a minute of animation a day. Think
It's
about
insane. It's. I mean, we glibly talk about anime production being a sweatshop, but this is on an exponentially like worse level than I think anything I've heard of in this industry for years.
And
like
it's especially galling because most of this entire debate was started by the CEO of MAPPA going on ANN and saying, "Look how hard we work, people." Isn't
Yeah,
that cool?
Yes. I made a joke about it in the previous podcast, but I'm gonna bring it up again. That interview with MAPPA CEO Manabu Otsuka, where he talks about his desire was to like through brute force leapfrog MAPPA into the same like echelon as a KyoAni or a Madhouse.
UFO table, yeah.
Or a UFO table, my bad. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like
Who took
here's
like
the thing.
years and years and years of experience
building up
building up
building
their-
up goodwill, right?
Madhouse is like 30 plus years old.
Right, like KyoAni is like for whatever you feel about what they actually make, which I've certainly said before, KyoAni as a studio is a project decades in the making, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It is the
But,
training
possibly
and
the only sustainable anime studio,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Like,
Also
it
a
is one of the-
studio famously holistic to its employees.
Yeah.
Yes, and like it is almost like sickly ironic that Otsuka is like, oh, I want to become a KyoAni tier studio by doing all of the things KyoAni didn't do to get there. And like, I mean, and just to bring up like movie production, like for similar like comparison, right? Like Promare, just to bring up a Promare because it is another like visual spectacle style movie. That movie took like 3 years to make.
Yeah.
Like compare that to 4 months. Like it's and here's the thing, I don't even know like what Trader's working conditions are like, but 3 years sure sounds a lot better than 4 months.
I mean, that's, and also bear in mind that was with an entire like full-on co-production studio. Like Sanzigen
Yeah.
co-produced
Yes.
a lot of that movie.
like
that's not just contracting out. That is a
Right.
second studio.
Senzigen and Trigger are part of the same like holding conglomerate,
Right, but
yeah,
it is a proper
More
full-on
people
yeah,
on it. And Mappa's still cranking out like 3 shows a season or something, right?
right.
Like
That is like, I mean, they just
Yeah.
finished Attack on Titan like a week ago. Like,
Yeah.
Like people have been talking, like there's been like a sort of a thank you MAPPA hashtag, or there was one going around the end of Attack on Titan, but right before this Jujutsu Kaisen stuff started coming up, that like
Mhm.
kind of sit with me in a very like wrong place, because it's like, yes, should we like thank and recognize the artists who like made these shows possible? Of course, but like the hashtag is thank you MAPPA, right? It is
Right,
thank you to
because
the
they
studio.
saved Attack on Titan after Wit just didn't want to do it.
With every passing year, I become more convinced that Studio Wit dropping Attack on Titan is the single smartest decision that studios made in their like in the history of that studio.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's
they dropped fucking villains.
Yeah, I think it's
they did. They took a hard look and they were like, look, we can't juggle this many projects at once.
I think what's just super galling about all of this, like we said, is because it is coming like direct from the horse's mouth here, right? Like we've heard talk
They're
and
proud of it.
stories.
They're happy. They're
Yeah, and it's not
boasting
it,
about it.
right. And they're not only just putting it out there themselves. They're like expecting people to think they're cool and like
They
like
want
this is a
medal
good
for it,
thing.
you know? Like
Right.
it's like
And as I was saying earlier, it's just such a deep misunderstanding of the way that you truly do become like one of those highly like KyoAni, as I said, is famous for paying animators a much higher wage than the standard wage. It also, is famous for nurturing talent and, training and refining talent. Madhouse has existed for 30 years, despite some really close shaves, because it has built up a core team that are loyal to the studio, who feel that its success is tied to their own careers, and
Right.
it's just like the idea that you can fucking slave drive these people and then climb over their bodies to the top is so deeply insulting.
Right. And I think it also, even from a pure like pragmatic like standpoint, kind of misses what makes those legendary studios notable, right? Like, there's a reason we can name Naoko Yamada. Like, there's a reason why, with Trigger, we know. I mean, there's a reason why when Trigger does a panel, people chant Sushio's name, a guy who's not even a director, like a key animator. We know the name of one of their key animators, right? And I think the key there is
like what, just at their panel, like this past weekend, they were like, we got Sushio and Mai Yonayama back for Pain Stocking, and like that's like their headline.
And what
these
is
animators?
And the core of that, I think, is that like the best anime studios prioritize talent retention, right? Like, keep and nurture your talent, right? Like, let them grow.
Children.
I mean, like screw anime. That is the important factor in all creative industries.
Yeah, boy, let me tell you, a lot of industries are forgetting that.
Kicking out their institutional knowledge.
I mean, aside from us being an anime podcast, though, like that is a very much a reputation of the anime industry, though, of being in these situations and just like.
I mean,
seeing it put so like boldly out there is just like it's like disgusting.
Like Zom 100. Like, okay, granted, we didn't really like that show, but that's a show that's literally about working in an anime studio, grinding you into the dirt. It's not hard to. And then it was delayed because poetic justice really works sometimes. But
I mean that was I've noticed this in at least two anime that recently with Zom 100 and God, I can't think of the name of the show. It's like My Boss is Goofy or something this season. I'm noticing that they're being very careful to point out that they are working for like abusive corporations and that not
black companies.
They were just part of one of the bad ones. But so I mean, and that probably ties to the whole Japanese work culture and all that, which we're not going to get into, but. Yeah, it's just
it's bad.
I don't know. Like we've known this even specifically with MAPPA for years, and just putting it all out there is just makes you even less interested in supporting their their work at this point. I mean,
and ultimately it will lead to bad work. Like
I mean, it's going to catch up with them eventually, right?
Maybe
like you can't.
Always does.
Maybe you can sustain this incredible level of burn for a few years, but eventually nobody will work for you and there won't be anybody left to burn out. So,
right.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's,
you can keep churning. Either you're going to lose your talent, burning them out. And eventually people aren't going to want to work with you, but unfortunately they're doing well right now though, and I don't know.
I mean, that is the thing, right? Like
it's not only bad for MAPPA; it's bad for the industry as a whole.
Yes, absolutely.
Because how many of these like amazing animators who are doing amazing work are being burned out so hard now that they will never work in the industry again, right?
Right. Yeah. Like, again, I will quote him again, Enrico Nobili, who was the animation director for episode 17 of Jujutsu Kaisen, so the one that just aired. Like, am I going to ever hear that dude's name again? Like, I don't know, right? Like, is that guy going to, be animating anything after like Jujutsu Kaisen? Like,
yeah.
It's hard to say.
It's not like they're getting paid a lot for this either, right? Like,
it's not particularly rewarding either.
Yeah.
So, I think that is a frustrating thing. Is how many like actual real generational talents are we just gonna like?
They're just gonna kill people's careers,
throw into the kiln, right? Because of production schedules like this. I mean, the real galling thing, like, is I was reading up on it. Apparently, and like the really frustrating thing is like various parts of this like equation can wash their hands because of basically like, okay, so my understanding is that MAPPA was given 2 years to animate Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2. And that roughly tracks with how long it's been since the prior season.
Right. But how many fucking other shows are MAPPA doing?
Exactly. Right. That is the problem, right?
Like I feel like we keep saying every season, like, wow, MAPPA's doing a lot of shows.
Right.
Yeah.
Like 2 years is actually, I mean, maybe that actually would be a fairly like reasonable span of time for a prestige anime like Jujutsu Kaisen, but not when you're doing like 8 other shows a year. And so it is a failure on multiple levels. Like it is a failure of scheduling. It is a failure of management. Like,
Yeah.
ugh, man.
I mean, it's not even been 2 years since Wonder Egg Priority put their animation director into a hospital. So,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
it's certainly
Unfortunately,
not just
it's
MAPPA.
not. Yeah, it's certainly not just MAPPA, but they seem to be embracing it, which is just gross. All right, let's move on to lighter topics. Let's talk about Apothecary Diaries.
Yeah.
Yeah, much lighter fare. Merely attempted assassinations.
Yes. This was
instead of,
basically a
Attempted assassinations are basically a fact of daily
Yes,
life at the
indeed.
Chinese
Court,
court.
yeah.
Those can be fun.
This was basically a two-parter. There was a big party at the palace, and so everyone has to dress up and whatnot. And poison tasting has to happen for the 4 top concubines.
right.
The 2 of which get introduced here, or the like. Aduo, the older woman consort in her 30s, and consort Lishu, who is 14.
Yes.
And they explained that Lishu was the concubine of the previous emperor 5 years ago, when she was 9.
Which again, I guess, should be said, right? That like this was certainly not uncommon in the time, right? And it generously is more a political thing than hopefully a real relationship. But of course, one can never.
Then they also explained the Empress Dowager had the current emperor when she was so young that they dare not say it out loud.
Yeah, which is some weird.
The previous emperor was a creep.
That's what they're going for.
Yes.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah, but yes, I guess the point of these episodes is kind of like beginning to introduce some of the like inter-imperial like court intrigue, right? Like which concubine is
a little,
against the other and such. There's a little bit of the like. We get the reveal that Mao Mao purposely uses makeup to make her less physically appealing, like that her freckles are actually an elaborate makeup ritual she does every day.
I said to Iro when we watched that it has the exact same energy as that scene in Barbie where Ryan Gosling takes the glasses off of Barbie and says, "Oh, you're actually beautiful," which is itself like a total send up of the concept. It's a little hard to take seriously.
Yeah, the thing is, like, Mao's always like at her best when she's like a weird poison pervert gremlin. But then the story must also bend itself backwards at times to be like, but look how she's the smartest, prettiest girl, actually. But she's also so grounded because she doesn't care about that.
Yeah. But I mean, the point I guess that we're getting at, right, is like she just does this because she grew up like in the red light district, in the red light district, right, and like. There is this like the unfortunate idea that like a girl like her would most certainly be at risk of being assaulted. I mean how she ends up in the court in the first place is she got kidnapped, right? So like there is certainly a real like kind of interesting subtext there because like
should have put more freckles on.
Jinshi, right, the eunuch, right, he is like. Again, it's a little hackneyed, but I do like he is like completely caught off guard by this. Like in some ways, despite how much he's been set up, Right. How much he's been set up as like the infallible, like all-knowing, like master of the court.
Mm-hmm.
Like
he's still somebody who lives within the court and all of its creature comforts, right?
Right, and is like completely unprepared to like be like confronted with this type of information, and it is an interesting subplot. I thought that there was actually a little bit of meat there. I mean, it's it lasts for all of like 5 minutes before they move on to the rest of the story. But
it's the like big plot thing that happens at this party also is that the poison is detected. She finds poison in the food.
Finally.
Yes.
Finally.
And Goof, she like drinks the soup and everyone's like, wow, she looks like she's really enjoying that soup. She said, but because she's a sick poison pervert, that's why. And so,
Yes.
but then, like, she goes and runs off to like puke it out. But it's like, oh, there must have not been real poison in there. And some other people drink the soup like off screen because they don't think there's actually poison in it.
Right.
And it causes a whole incident. But of course, the extra twist on this is that somebody switched the bowls out between consorts. And so Consort Gyokyo, who Mama works for, was not the one who was being targeted. It was Consort Lishu, who was actually being targeted for the poisoning.
Right.
Which they discover via other...
Well, it's a little bit convoluted.
Stuff,
Basically, like Mao like surmises that like the dish that was poisoned had been altered for like somebody's like palate, right?
Right.
And she like deduces that, oh, that must be because the person does not like to eat this dish how it is normally prepared. And this is how we find out that the consort, Li Shu, is she's allergic to fish.
Yeah, something like that, mackerel or what have you.
Mackerel,
Which, of course, and so because this is still an apothecary show, just to go to a lengthy explanation about what allergies are and how you cannot eat. If you have an allergy to something, you cannot eat it. Unlike poisons, where you can definitely build an immunity to it. No, you can't for most poisons. But
Mao is just the dread pirate, Robert.
Yeah, operating in fantasy logic here, but.
Look,
I mean, this is all still.
If you
I'm assuming this is all still pretty
with
lighthearted,
small
right?
bullets, you eventually gain immunity to larger bullets.
That's how Inferno Cop did it. I don't know.
So this is all still fairly lighthearted, though, right?
Yeah,
like, even though there
relatively,
Yes, I mean, it is still the show. It is still the show that returns to like the chibi Mao, going, hey, I love poisons because I'm a weirdo little gremlin.
The 2-frame animation of the girls from the other faction running away from her is very good.
Right, just sliding along the ground, right?
Yeah, just
slide whistle and all.
Is this like a Love Lab situation where you guys are just watching for the cartoon animations?
I don't know why I'm still watching this show.
I don't know. I mean, I'm still watching it.
It sounds fine. I
read the manga and like I think the story actually goes some places or like
cool.
Some of these small details like actually do pay off later, right? Is what I'll say.
Oh, I'm sure they do, right? Yeah. Like, I mean, they are introducing characters who it feels like, oh, you're not important now, but you'll probably be important later, right?
Yeah.
Like, but
right. But I mean, it's fine. It's a totally okay show, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. But it's not like the thing to be watching this season or anything, right? It's
Hey, like I said, I'm usually the guy in that position.
You're usually the one watching like B tier shows, right? Like,
ouch.
I would. That's how I would describe it. Yeah.
Yeah, you accept that title with grace very well.
Yeah, I know what my job is here. All right. Well, let's move on to what many people call an A tier show this season. Spy Family Season 2. We're on the boat.
They're on the boat.
Has anybody watched today's episode? I have not.
I did. I did manage, even though it came out like... So we are recording a day earlier than we normally do this week. And
the cliffhanger of Sickle and Chain Barnaby
Yeah, what
She's
happens,
origami
Jel?
Barnaby.
Did
She-
Sickle and Shane Barnaby easily dispatch of Yor? Is
no.
Lloyd back to being a single father?
Before we begin
No.
on this episode, I do have to bring one of our periodic updates from the real world, which also concerns my recent trip to Hong Kong. Spy Family is everywhere. It's huge.
Oh, I'm
People
sure.
are so into it. Like
It's a big deal.
every
Yeah.
other store has a tie-in with Spy Family. You can buy
Hell
the
yeah.
clothes in like regular department stores. Also, Anya, the face of KFC.
Hell yeah! You know what? Let the little girl have her fried
So
chicken.
whenever you go into a KFC, there is like big cutouts of Anya.
She helped them break the
everywhere.
curse.
Yeah. Yep. There's an obscure
Special
reference for you.
peanut crusted chicken for Anya.
Yeah, so
Um,
just to reassure you that it's big in the real.
No, I mean it's
Alright.
I mean it's not. I wouldn't say it's that big here, but it is a big deal. Like this is a
Yes.
mainstream anime. Like everybody loves Spy Family.
But
Yeah, so we're on the boat. Your fights the chain guy. It's all fine. I will say, God, I guess I'm the Debbie Downer on this episode here, but I like the first Bodo episode because I felt like we were still getting a mix of like goofy Spy Family hijinks and
Right,
you're
you
murdering
know.
people.
Right.
Today's episode is kind of dry. Like it was,
Oh,
we have the cool fight in the beginning that's very well animated, and your manages to, of course, I mean, no surprise, to incapacitate the guy in a way that does not get her caught. And then there's just like a lot of sitting around waiting, and like so the premise is they're on a boat. She's protecting this woman and her child from assassins,
Yeah.
and they have to get to the other boat, right? And they don't get to the boat in this episode, even though we're like,
Right.
so like it's mostly just, and there's not really any other assassination attempts in this episode either.
I don't remember. See, here's the thing: you're talking about this, and I don't remember. But in hindsight, this is like it. I assume this is adapting whatever was in the manga, and this is likely what contributes to some of the like feelings about the Your Boat arc.
Right.
Yeah, I think I get
criticism
it.
I've heard of this arc is that it kind of gets dragged out too long.
Yeah, and I and you guys heard me being like, I don't know what people are talking about, because the first episode was like, well, if it's just going to be this, this feels like more Spy Family, and then this episode was like, okay, I think I'm starting to see it, because like not a whole lot happens.
I will say that like obviously I have not seen the latest episode, but I was pretty broadly positive on the first two, and I was totally expecting them to wrap it up in this third episode. So knowing that they go to a fourth, I can begin to see
at least a fourth.
It probably speaks to like our cultural memory, because I also was like, yeah, right, she fights the sickle and chain guy, and then after that it's the battle royale part, right? It's like that's where she like kills 18 assassins, and it's like, nope, I guess not. It's like
not yet.
I will
Maybe
say
next
that
week.
in the previous episode, the segment where Anya wants the skeleton keychain is incredibly good.
it's so
Yes,
Stupid.
yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like
Yeah.
that was all very good. So
the combination of like Anya's incredible like distress and Lloyd's incredible distress, and then just when you think it can't get any better, there is the joke about how he can change clothes very fast because he's a master spy. Just a terrific scene.
Yeah, so there's not really much of that going on in the second episode. It's a lot of your waiting around and struggling with her internal feelings, which frankly are not really handled that well either.
right,
it's
because
fine.
like the sort of quote unquote internal drama of this arc, right, is beginning to question the
Why
purpose
she's-
of her occupation, which is
Right.
being an assassin, and this idea that, well, I did it to put food on the table for my brother when we were orphans, but I don't have to kill people for a living, do I? And it's like, I mean, let's come on, we know where this is going, right? Like,
Yeah, and it's like I feel like, I don't know, that stuff all kind of feels like a waste of time at this point, but
yeah.
that is a lot of what this episode is her fighting with that, and it's like, yeah, all right, whatever. So it's fine. I'm sure we'll be back in action next time. Spy Family has always had for me its ups and downs here and there, but it never gets too low or too high for me either. So it's just
Right.
it's still a fun time regardless.
Well, don't worry. I'm pretty sure the ending of the boat arc will at least like shoot your back up to the top of the ranks of like
the
most
problematic
problematic
tier list.
waifu. Yeah.
Yeah, no, they are set like it's very clear that that's where it's headed in this episode, but it does not happen in this episode,
Right.
Because they start showing all the cartoon villain assassin guys that are gathering.
You're like that like one episode of every Lupin TV series where Lupin gets attacked by like 12 assassins.
The Rat
Right.
Clan or what have you.
Yeah.
That's what we're headed for. So I'm looking forward to that. All right,
Yeah.
let's talk about
Yeah. Yes.
let's talk about Frieren.
Yeah. Frieren
You
voiced
wanna talk
by
about
the same actress as Anya, so there's our segue.
If you want to talk about a show that is, visually impressive and well directed, but also not at the cost of burning, an excessive amount of human capital.
Yeah. So I do feel like these two episodes were maybe stretched a little thin out. Like I do feel like, especially in episode 10. So in episode 10, it's we get the final showdown between Frieren and
Aura.
what's her name?
Aura. The guillotine.
And it's very cool, her
Fake granddaughter.
but we spend maybe 15 minutes explaining that Frieren can hide her power level and the demons do not. Right.
Right.
Which I felt like that was dragged out a little bit.
Yeah.
But
they kind of labour the point. I do think that there's one genuinely great moment in that episode, which is where they do the sort of like match cut to reveal that what's her master's name? I forget. Flamme has aged.
Yes.
Because firstly, like there is no visual indicator on screen that time has passed, and also because it is the first time we have seen that Flamme actually aged. We have only ever seen her as perpetually youthful.
Yeah.
So to me, that was both a great visual flourish and also quite a good twist in the story there.
I will agree with your general feelings that maybe like they stretch it out a little bit too long, but I do think that episode has like a strong thematic impact on the story because it reveals many things about Frieren without being like gratuitous. Like we don't need the whole Frieren backstory, but this episode gives us insight into how she becomes the character she is in modern day.
There's the really good bit, I think, like right after Himmel picks her up basically, and it's like, don't you want to join the party? And then you just get like 4 frames of really fast of like them fighting bosses.
I did like the feeling of the like we've done that in a JRPG.
All that other stuff happens. It's not important right now.
But
I mean, this also does have one of my favourite tropes, which is we begin the episode knowing Frieren is absolutely going to obliterate this little girl, and the entire episode building up to her obliterating the little girl.
I think the reason why like a lot of the directing choices here work really well for me is like actually like Iro, what you brought up is a perfect example of that. Of like, we spent all this time with Flamme and like Flamme's influence on Frieren, right? And it's like we have to remember the time that Frieren spent with
1,000
Flamme
years ago,
was A, 1,000 years ago, but B, roughly the same span of time as the time she spent with Himmel and the Heroes Party.
Yeah, it was like 2 minutes of her life, right? Like,
and it's like that's what I mean, right? It's like both were like roughly equivalent to 2 minutes of her life, but those 2 minutes she spent with Flamme were like deeply influential on her, right? Yeah. And it kind of shows this idea that even for someone like Frieren who sees time in such a long-term view, is still capable of like emotionally resonating with very brief periods of it if they are like particularly impactful, right? Like Flamme forms the foundation of the mage Frieren is today, right? Like
I think one cliche that has always annoyed me about stories about very long-lived beings is the perception that time somehow seems more fleeting for longer-lived beings, and I think this is a good pushback against that shows that even relatively brief periods of time can still be just as impactful to a person who lived 1,000 years as opposed to 100 years.
Yeah,
right. and all that stuff was good. So I'm not saying that it needed to be cut. I think it was the more like the technical explanations of how everybody's mana works and everything that probably could have been trimmed down a little bit.
There is a lot of
it's minor
repetition,
words spent on
minor complaint, but I did feel like
because I think they're trying to like get at how just as how demons, like prey upon humans by speaking their language with the understanding that humans inherently hold empathy for things that could speak their language. Like Frieren does the same to demons because their language is that of power levels, right?
Yeah.
So you have you have this long explanation of like demon power levels and hiding your mana to sort of establish
and not
the scene where Flamme blows away those 3 demons is pretty incredible.
Not to harp on the demon thing too much again, but also it is a little just adding to the weirdness. Like if they're capable of having like pride and anger, shouldn't they be capable of other feelings? I don't know. Anyway, we don't need to. We don't need to beat that point up again. It's just again that always feels a little. It does still feel a little weird to me, that whole thing, but it's fine, whatever.
Hey, shout outs to Fern and Frieren's Big Burger. The reward for
giant
for saving the city.
Hamburgers.
Giant burger.
The Big Bang Burger.
Yeah, Big Bang.
3 times the size of their head.
Very good. Very good. And then episode 11 is
they're snowed in.
They're snowed in for 6 months.
Yeah.
With an elf monk guy that has great abs.
Yes. Just doing squats in a cabin.
This is our first time seeing another elf, right?
Yes.
So
we meet Kraft the monk, and I actually, here's the thing. I only kind of vaguely remember this chapter when I read it, and I think it speaks to the work they're doing in this adaptation that this storyline actually ended up sticking with me a lot more after seeing it animated, because Kraft kind of represents an interesting like counterpart to Frieren, because the implication is that he is very old, right? By elven standards.
He tells Frieren like, "Oh, you're still young."
Right.
Yeah, right.
1,000-year-old Frieren.
Yeah, and like there is this implication, right? Like the way he's built, the kind of implications about his physicality. Like, oh, was this dude part of like an even older heroes party from like a time so long past that we don't even know who he is anymore? Like we don't even know the name of who he killed, right? Like that kind of feeling.
Like cyclical history is one of the reliable anime tropes that tend to pop up again and again because of cultural reasons.
I mean, they don't even say anything necessarily about that, but they just say like,
well, he mentions like the people that would remember what he did are gone, right? But like, which just gives you the implications of
Stark's like, well, you must be like a really famous monk, but I've never heard of you. That type of stuff.
Yeah.
And also like I think that's a good way of like putting things in perspective. Like this is a show about how Frieren feels the world is fading around her, but to this dude, she is fading just as mortal beings are to her, so to speak. You know,
they're like,
they're like,
don't you know Frieren who like helped kill the Demon King? He's like, well, there was a Demon King.
And I actually really liked. I'm not usually one, for like spirituality or religion in my fiction, but I actually really. Again, I'm surprised it didn't stick with me reading the manga at the time, but I actually really liked their explanation for why such a long-lived person like an elf would choose to like believe in religion, to like pursue spirituality. And it kind of gets at this idea that like on some level, not even in a selfish sense, everybody wants to be remembered, right? Like that's kind of what drives human nature. It's why in that episode we have the flashback of like Himmel, like helping out some orphan kids and, funding the rebuilding of a village, right? Mm-hmm. Why he gets all those statues made of him, right? He wants people to remember him. And for an elf who is living, again, we don't know how old Kraft is, right? But if 1,000 is young to him, like,
maybe thousands?
We're talking thousands, right?
Right.
And like when you are living life on that long of a scale, like, forget statues. Like,
right,
there won't even be Yeah, like there won't even be civilizations that remember you. And
I
so,
mean,
like, in
like,
some
without-
ways,
No, go on, G. Sorry.
oh, just like, and in some sense, then it almost like makes a lot of sense to pursue spirituality, right? Like to like whether it's real or not, the desire to believe in an almighty being who will remember you because
Yeah.
nobody on this mortal like plane will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing I was going to reference was like, and I don't want to be one of those guys who references Dark Souls all the time, but in Dark Souls 2, there's Stray, the guy who you like find frozen as a statue.
Yes, yeah.
And when you unfreeze him, he's like, "Oh, here I am in the land of whatever," and you can be like, "Oh, actually, it's Dragon Lake now," and he's like, "Whatever." Like he's just he's seen it rise and fall so many times that the details
Right.
are irrelevant at this point.
Yeah.
Just
You know,
like
that's true, being truly ancient.
You heard it here, as folks. You can quote Zig. Frieren is the Dark Souls of anime.
The Dark Souls 2 of anime.
Dark Souls 2 of anime. Wow.
I'm not sure if that's a compliment or not.
Similarly, on a much shorter time scale, the party is informed that to get to the next checkpoint or what have you, they need a first-class mage certification. And Frieren's like, I don't have time. Like, what do you mean?
Get my mage license.
Yeah, your mage license standards change so often that I can't be bothered.
Right,
But
like she
then-
busts
and there's
out
an
like some
impo-
like fucking trinket, and she's like, "Look, I already have this." And
My
they're like, "What the
my
fuck
holy
is
symbol
that?"
from 150 years ago, right?
Yeah.
I'm really excited for the next episode where Frieren and Piccolo will have to go and take their
Oh, I
magic
don't know.
exam.
God, that would have been better than what we're getting, but
Well, it's still going to be quite a while until we get to that, but
yes,
that
yes.
is
there's-
that might make or break.
Yes, the Freyren has to get her
The magic
mage
exam
license
arc. Yeah.
Okay.
is lingering on the horizon.
Okay. Well,
Uh,
I mean, to
don't-
me,
I
that
don't
sounds
wanna-
fun, but you guys sound like
We'll
you're
see.
dreading that.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I'm curious how. Let me put this: the manga took a lot of hiatuses, and we'll see how the pacing shakes out in the anime next year. Right? Like, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, Frieren's still good,
Yeah,
folks.
I think it's pretty solid.
So, all right, let's move on. Gee, you're still watching Overtake?
I guess I am. Though
I didn't double check
I am-
that specifically before we started. but yes.
I am falling behind. I must confess.
Okay. Have you watched
I
any
have
new
watched-
episodes since we
Yes,
last?
I have watched a new episode since the last time we have
Okay.
talked. So they're racing again, obviously. Thankfully.
Yep. All right.
I know it's been a little bit, right?
In the racing show,
Yeah, I know.
They're in
Like
Las
other-
Vegas. It's crazy.
unlike other racing shows, this one's about the characters.
Oh God, what it.
I'm sorry.
Well, anyway, so it's another race in the league or whatever the season, and Haruka's doing really well. His practice numbers are looking his times are looking excellent. Everybody's like, oh, this is the one. This is the time Haruka makes podium, right? And then the great fear of everyone who has played the 2017 video game Motorsport Manager. It starts raining.
Oh no!
The rain starts coming down, light at first, but it gets heavier.
And everybody knows what that means. Interesting race.
Yeah, because that is exactly what it is, right? Like it's an X factor, right? It changes the entire game up,
That
right?
makes sense.
We started getting into the this part seemed a little crazy
So,
to me
They still
personally.
race in the rain if it's really rainy. Like,
They do.
it seems
they
like
do.
it's insanely dangerous if you're moving at speeds like that.
It is.
Yeah.
Wait,
I
Oh,
will
boy.
say that if it gets really heavy, they generally will stop
okay.
the
I'm
race.
gonna
Right,
say, I was gonna say, like, this sounds really.
There is a point where they hit stoppage, but they do not. So yes, that we're kind of getting into that, right? Because this is a thing I don't think I've mentioned. Haruka's father was also an F4 racer, maybe I don't know, a pro racer, right?
Formula racer.
A formula racer who died in a car crash while racing in the rain. So
Okay.
it is that we're setting that up, right?
Uh-huh, mhm.
So it's like, oh, can Haruka overcome the ghosts of his past, right?
Right.
And kind of the plot is like Koya, the photography, his photography daddy, really doesn't want Haruka to race, right? Because Koya has recently learned the truth of how Haruka's father passed away, right? And so he's like, I don't want you to race. It's too dangerous. And, Haruka kind of rightfully responds like, you're not my fucking dad, old
It's
man.
not your
Like,
call. Yeah.
it's not your fucking call,
Mhm.
And, in
Also,
the end,
like
Haruka-
I might posit, you don't get into single seat open wheel racing if you have a particularly keen sense of self-preservation. Right.
Yes. And so Haruka decides to race. And Zig, I'm glad you're here because from my perspective, this seems kind of insane. One of the decisions that various teams make before the race is whether to race on slicks in the hope that the rain lets up,
That
or
is
starting on wet tires.
absolutely a real thing.
But it's like pouring, like it's not drizzling.
Yeah,
like
I think there has to be some artistic license, right? Generally,
okay.
like if it is raining really heavily, no team will dare go out on slicks. Normally
Right.
this decision is when like maybe there's a light drizzle, but there might be like a dry patch coming over the
Right,
horizon,
lit up.
or like maybe it's dry now, but it's threatening rain. But if we stay on the slicks for the first segment and all that stuff, but
Right.
if
So
it-
they sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, if it is raining at the beginning, they will start on wet tires. There's very
Okay.
little debate about that.
Yeah, I think they kind of set it up for our like drama then, because like it turns
Yeah,
out that
absolutely.
Belsorio, who is sort of the premier team in F4, whose team is like the primary rival of Haruka,
Yeah.
they decide to race on slicks in the rain. So Haruka is like, well, if they race on slicks, like the only chance I have of like making podium is if I also race on slicks.
And to be
And-
clear, the difference, like if you play your cards right, the difference between the slicks and the wet weather tires is like multiple seconds per lap.
Oh, yeah,
It is
totally.
colossal.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah. Like you are inherently giving up speed to race on wet weather tires. And so the race happens, and it initially goes very well, and then the rain comes down even harder, and it goes bad.
Yeah. Crash.
Big surprise.
Satsuki, my bad. One of the main rival on Belsorio, the guy who said his idol is James Hunt in the previous episode, and who talks about how the greatest like quality a racer can have is luck. Almost ironically, is the first to have a like cataclysmically bad crash. I don't think he's dead. His car didn't explode into flames, but he's not looking.
Probably not going to be
And-
racing anytime soon. It seems like.
Yes, and
Yeah.
Haruka spins out, hits a wall, and so but not nearly as bad. He does not end up in a racer collision like Satsuki does, and so he is also disqualified. And so that is kind of how the episode ends. It's good racing drama, but I'm not sure how I feel about it narratively, because it kind of like is letting credence to the idea that Koya, the photographer, was right to like butt in, because like it turns out that he was right in hindsight. He shouldn't have raced in the rain, and it's like, I don't know, like it's the weird feeling of like, he is the viewpoint character, but because racing is not his background, it kind of sticks with me the wrong way, that like the narrative's kind of framing him as in the right about like
Right.
how this racing
Yeah.
team should operate.
I mean,
But it's like,
to be-
dude, you don't even go here,
And to be clear, I'm not watching Overtake, but the thing which often annoys me about media about car racing is that the idea that it is inherently incredibly dangerous, right? Like, is it dangerous? Yeah, of course it is, but everybody on the grid has a certain, you are bought into a certain level of risk just by being there, right?
Right.
There is no...
There's no surprises. Like
yeah,
they
like
know
trying
what
to
they're.
accentuate the danger in that sense is kind of a lazy crutch for storytelling, I think.
Yeah.
It's kind of how I felt about this episode. Is like yes, obviously motorsport racing is dangerous. You were driving very fast cars, but there's a feeling in this episode like motorsport racing, the death game or something. And it's like, come on, guys, like it's.
I mean, maybe if this show was set in 1960 rather than 2023.
Yeah.
But again, that is the latest episode I watched. I have not seen the subsequent episode, which is about the aftermath of that race. But so I don't know actually what kind of like lesson they're trying to land on. So I cannot actually speak to where things go after
But-
that episode. But
Spill the
Does
tea,
his-
Joe. Is that dude dead?
no, he didn't. He's not watching. Or are you?
Oh, are you not watching it anymore?
Oh, I know. I didn't watch
Oh,
past episode
jeez.
1.
Yeah,
bad.
no, I'm
Sorry,
the
I'm
only one
getting-
still watching this
She's
show.
the only one still watching
Sorry,
it,
I must have got a mix
kind of.
up. My
Yeah.
apologies.
But,
Does his hot ex-wife show up?
she does for a little bit,
Okay.
not in as many scenes as some prior episods.
All right.
So
I was gonna say,
inherently
'cause,
a
what
worse.
are
So
we
that's
doing
what.
here?
That's
But-
why you thought this episode was mid, then.
In all seriousness, I did enjoy the strategy aspect that they got into in this episode of like, what are we going to do, right? Like, which tires are we going to take? What's our racing strategy?
And to be
You know,
clear,
like-
that's one of the draws of the real life sport as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Like a big aspect of the race is like Belsorio, which is a two driver team, versus Haruka, who is a one driver team.
Mm.
Is like Belsorio's strategy at the beginning of the race is just like, hey, one is going to lead the other, and it's just like, just follow my tail lights, basically,
Yeah.
right? Like, because visibility is so bad, it's like, well, as long as we remain pretty close to each other, I can just follow his tail lights, and we should get out of this in one piece.
There's
Whereas
other
Haruka,
advantages. I was just going to say there's other advantages. There's slipstreaming, and also the fact that if you follow your teammate exactly, you will be driving over tarmac where he has already cleared. Most
exactly
of the
right.
water.
Whereas like Haruka does not have that because he is racing on his own. So it's like there's aspects of that where I'm like, oh, that's actually kind of neat and interesting. But maybe some of the human drama aspects of this show are starting to like fall apart for me here.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on and talk about Migi Dali. Zig, how far have you gotten on this?
So I am a few episodes behind, unfortunately.
Okay.
It's not easy to watch anime when you're 9,000 miles away, but
I hear you.
I did manage to see the episode which you spoke about last time, the episode where Dali catfishes his own brother. It might be the best single episode of anime I've seen this year. It's so funny.
But
It's
so you didn't see
incredible.
the one where they get in the attic of the house?
No, I mean I
Okay,
heard
that's-
you speak about it on the last
So that's the next episode. Okay.
So, first, Zig, let me ask you, because you are the only other person here who has watched any Twin Peaks. And
Yes.
So now I can like ask Smooth experience, how Twin Peaksy is this exactly?
I think it has some of the trappings, but
Mhm.
it feels like it's way
It's still very anime though. In a way.
yeah, it's I would not say that it is very Twin Peaksy beyond
Sure.
the trappings,
The
because
aesthetics, like
like the humor is way more slapsticky than Twin
Right.
Peaks, and like there's a level of, because the thing is Twin Peaks can get very dark, but there's kind of a level of meanness about the darkness in Migi and Dali, which I
Mhm.
don't necessarily feel like. There are other animes which are way more Twin Peaks-esque than this
Right,
show.
yeah.
Like I would compare it more to something like the Stepford Wives, for
Mm,
example. You know,
right.
the idea of
something else
darkness.
sort of lampooning like that type of media, like
Right, yeah, like the idea of darkness lurking in this perfect white picket
Mhm,
community. You know, I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that is probably the more apt comparison
Gotcha.
there.
Okay,
So
thank you.
when we did leave off last time, I was hanging on the decision. What was the show going to do? Because they got trapped in the attic. The younger brother Dolly and their housekeeper friend, who
Oh, he's the older brother.
isn't
He-
Migi
No,
first and Dolly.
No, it is Migi. It's called, the show is called Migi.
So it's
and
called
Dali,
Migi,
but
okay,
Dali's
yes.
the older brother.
I get that backwards.
Yeah,
all the
I
time.
remember because it's exactly the opposite of the
Okay.
way you would expect.
The younger brother,
Yeah.
is because he's the one that's investigating the house, while the older brother is dressed up like a baby and locked in the room. He gets caught with their housekeeper friend, and she takes the fall and is probably dead. And my question was, okay,
Will they go through with it?
she's either going to be dead, or there's going to be some comical explanation as to why she's not dead. And I did not account for the third option, which was we were not going to find out ever, probably.
Sure. I mean, I
Which-
think that leans slightly more towards being dead, but
Yeah, and I think also probably the best of those options. 'Cause, I mean, they do so basically he takes that opportunity to get out of the attic, and he's like, well,
Sure.
I hope she's not dead, and then we never see or hear from her again. Which means she's probably dead. But
I mean, you could be saving that reveal for suitably.
yeah, or we'll still come back to the end of the show. She comes back or something. Who knows?
Sure,
Anyway, she's out of the picture.
Yeah.
And yeah, so the boys kind of escalate their investigation. I'm not going to go through. There's so many things going on. I can't. We don't have time to go through all of it. But basically, to get out of this predicament, the older brother, who's dressed up like the baby, has to pretend to go through these stages of growing up over the course of a few weeks or something.
What?
Until he is up to his normal age of like 13 or 15 or however old they're supposed to be.
They're meant to be like 12 and a half, I think, or something.
Right, like 13-ish, something
going
around
on
right?
13, yeah.
Yeah, and so he does that so they can escape while the brother is investigating. And when they're finally about to get sent back to their adoptive home, they make their final play, which is to dress up as the ghost of their mother.
Sure.
And see how the various family members react to determine which one is the murderer. Because
this is a relatively low-key plan by the standards of the show.
Yeah,
so.
and if one of them reacts as if they've seen a ghost, then that was person that's probably the person that killed their mother. And by the way, the suspects here include the mother. It's that rich kid's family. It's his parents, his mother and father, this rich kid who's the same age as them, and his little sister. So those are their suspect lists.
I feel like I can. Yeah, I was going to say I feel like I can rule out one pretty easily.
Yeah, and so the little sister wouldn't have been born when the murder occurred, and the other kid is their age, so he would have been like 5 when the murder happened. So. But nevertheless, he's still on the suspect list.
Sometimes a kid just has bad vibes, you know.
And well, you see, it turns out that the little like whatever thing that they were holding that was the keepsake of their mother turned out to be a button from the kids' pajamas. They discover, which is
okay.
That's their big
clue.
Dun,
dun, dun. Yeah.
Anyway, so. Through their little ghost experiment, they become convinced that it is the actual kid that's their age that murdered their mother.
Sure,
but they have now been returned home, so they've lost access to him. And Migi, the older brother, right?
No, Dali's the older brother.
Dali, God, see, I can't get it straight. Okay, Dali, the older brother.
The way they are in the title.
Yes, I just have to reverse it. He decides the only way he can get back into talking to the rich kid again is to bring back his girl disguise.
Flawless logic.
And this is where, so in the course of the show, we've determined that these boys are terrible at everything except for 2 things, which is 1. Their incredible acrobatics to pose as one person.
Yep.
And 2, their stalking ability.
Sure.
Which includes like their disguises and stuff like that. But like so the older brother poses as the girl again, assuming he'll be able to hide it from his brother. But he has underestimated his younger brother's stalking abilities. And this creates a big mess as he gets caught by his younger brother, but he still stays in character, still tries to keep it up, and now his younger brother thinks that he is trying to seduce the rich kid, and let's just say 2 things happen in the latest episode. And again, I'm not going to spoil the details.
Sure.
1, they find out how their mother died.
Okay, that seems like a pretty big deal.
It is, although I found myself with many more questions.
I mean, my prediction from the beginning was that she wasn't actually murdered, so like
she's dead.
I know, I'm sure she's dead, but like I guess like just by the way you're sort of dancing around the question, I feel like yes, but no, right?
I would say I still don't feel I could definitively answer that question, not dancing around it.
Okay.
All we know is the method of her death. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
which has left me with, in some ways, more questions.
Yep. I mean, that's what you want from a good whodunit, right?
Yeah. So there's the thing is, though, this all gets thrown to the side because the younger brother now no longer cares because he has discovered that his brother catfished him and he's pissed.
I was going to say, I feel like this is building up to a family rift, right?
Yes, and so now they want to kill each other, and that's kind of where we leave off at the end of the latest episode.
Sure, I mean, that's one way to escalate, right? Like,
yeah, so it's very good because it's like, oh, we've solved at least, probably 50% of the mystery,
but now we hate each other.
But now they want to kill each other, and that's where we've left off. So, yeah, I still really like this show.
It sounds to me like that they're still managing to dance that weird line of like comedy, drama, right? Which is it's so difficult.
It's very hard to do.
That. I'm really worried that they're going to fall off it at some point. But
well, I do think, because what I brought up last time is like, are they going to lean more into the comedy, or are they going to lean more into the dark side of it? I feel like they've leaned more toward the comedy for the most part, and probably where they're going to go eventually.
Sure.
And that question has been punted further down the line. Yeah, I think we're going to have to wait till we get to the end.
Yeah, the thing is, like, that's cool. Like, that's fine. The comedy is good. But at the end of the day, this is still a show about someone being murdered. And like, unless you go full wacky, it's kind of hard to make that a punchline. So,
so they have to commit to some level of, like, I don't know, actual emotional weight here at some point.
And this is only going to be one core, right?
I don't know for sure. I'm assuming that's the case. I feel
like that's
I mean, I know the manga was finished, so there is an ending to the story.
Yeah, it's going to be 13 episodes.
Sure.
And I don't think it was a very long manga either. So like,
it was a couple of years, right?
Yeah, I think I'm hoping that they will finish the story. So, but we'll see.
I'm encouraged to hear that it is still pulling off that balancing act.
Yeah, I mean, if you've been enjoying it up to this point,
I have very much been enjoying it.
Then you're going to continue enjoying it just as much over the next couple of episodes.
I'm glad to hear that.
And I think if they can stick the landing, I'm going to really.
That's always the big
very
question
positive
with, like, because at its heart, this is still kind of a mystery story, and so much of mystery stories depends on the resolution. So we'll have to see what they've got up their sleeve.
But if they can pull off a reasonable conclusion, I'm going to be pretty high on this one by the time we're done. So
cool.
All right.
Okay.
Moving on. I quit Bullbuster, guys. I'm sorry. I couldn't do it.
I don't blame you.
I just ran out of time.
Yeah.
Nah, it's cool.
That something had to go. If I was going to fit that Gridman movie in, something had to go. This was it. I take it that you guys don't sound very encouraged either.
It's not been great.
I wish Bullbuster was the show we all thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Like, okay, like we the joke about the economically viable mecha anime or whatever, like,
are we just living the joke now?
Kinda, yeah. Like, Bullbuster doesn't fucking do shit in this show. Like, Bullbuster will show for like a minute, like get kneecapped by some sort of technical failure, and then be out of the game for the rest of the episode. And it's like, that was funny a couple of times, but like, it's rapidly hitting the point of like, why the fuck do we even keep this thing around? It doesn't even.
Why don't you just go get like a front end loader or something? Right?
Yeah, right. Like for the money that was spent, like unironically, the money that was spent like building and maintaining Bullbuster, like if you could hire just like 4 more dudes with spear guns, would probably be a better use of your money than Bullbuster. Right, and that's a shitty thing. That's a really shitty conclusion to reach in your mecha anime.
Right. The thing is, like, I've heard way too many people just say about mecha in general, well, if the amount of money it would take for these mechs
yeah, exactly.
spent on conventional weaponry.
Right.
And so,
Like, yeah, I hate that shit because at the end of the day, giant robots are a man's romance, right?
Right,
That's all
but-
that really matters.
But also, this is a show explicitly about like the bureaucracy surrounding
Right.
giant robots, and
Right.
so like you are drawing attention to those factors. And if
Exactly.
you don't have a good answer to that question, then
Yeah.
you can't blame
Right.
the audience for beginning
Exactly.
to lean in that direction.
Yeah,
Right.
like, I hate to keep bringing it up, but again, shows like Die Guard and Pat Labor do figure out an effective explanation to this question, right? Like, whether it's justified or not, it's like, look, the only thing that Pat Labor's conclusion that the only thing that can stop a bad guy with a robot is a good guy with a robot.
And the robot has a big revolver.
Die Guard says that, look, kaiju, man, only a giant robot can do anything about a kaiju.
Right.
Is that,
On the
Jet Jaguar is right there.
you need some Wowco robot to go with your capitalism is bad.
yes, and I think that is actually the core of it, right? Is that like you can have a robot that's kind of a piece of shit and is kind of impractical and a pain in the ass, but at the end of the day, you still want to see it do cool shit. All right, Jet Jaguar. All right, Singularity Points Jet Jaguar, the most fucking piece of shit robot we had ever seen in our lives, had like a 1.0 batting average. All right, that thing never failed in its mission to stop kaiju. Despite how much of a piece of shit it was.
I mean, in all seriousness, like in robot shows, generally the robot doing something is the carrot, right? Like you follow along, so the robot will do cool stuff, and that is your quote unquote reward for sitting through the talking or whatever. Like I'm being hilariously flippant, but you get the point, right?
Robot love is more it's more dynamic than human love, or however it goes.
Yes, exactly.
So I was just gonna say, like, I mean, these are all problems we've seen coming and developing over time here. Was there anything specific in like these 2 episodes that stood out as like good or bad or whatever?
The latest 2 episodes, we are doing the new hire storyline.
Yeah.
Oh, right. They were bringing. I think that's the last thing I saw. Is like they were just bringing in like new guy.
They're bringing in this
right?
dude named Namari. He's a new hire. He comes very recommended. His credentials are very good, and best of all,
got a boating license.
He has a boating license, and the parent company will pay his salary. So,
right. I remember that at the very end of the last episode I saw.
0 expenses on the ledger, and naturally they do the thing of he has a very. I think he's almost intended to be coded as like autistic or on the spectrum. Like he has a very like
literalistic,
literalist personality. He doesn't really understand social norms or cues.
I mean,
like,
that might also just be a joke, right?
I think so, but it's to such a degree that it's like, well, I mean, yeah, it might still be being
right, but in the
being
context
played as humor, but
in the context of like he is an employee of this company, it's very like. If there's an alert called in, 4:59, he's like, well, now that's 5:00, I'm going home.
Right, like,
right.
I mean, I do that, but
so he's a hero, is what you're saying.
So here's the thing, right? Obviously, I respect that, but then you have to think about the fact that what are these people are doing is they're fighting kaiju, right? They're less office workers and more akin to emergency workers, and we can get into a whole conversation about how emergency workers should be, compensated much better for like the sacrifices they make. But at the end of the day, the point is that their job doesn't really follow a strict schedule, right? When kaiju show up, it's time to get to work, right?
Yeah, there is an inherent understanding that you work to the job, not to the schedule in jobs like that. Right.
And so that's kind of the immediate, kind of friction point with Namari, because he doesn't really see the kaiju as a problem, right? He's like, yeah, okay, sure, a kaiju showed up, but
it's his job, and so he'll clock out when it's time to clock out.
Right. And it kind of gets resolved by the end where, like, basically Namari's behavior almost gets himself killed because, like, he thinks that, like,
is he supposed to be a pilot, or what is his job?
No, well, he's introduced as, an employee and someone with a boating license, so, is able to transport Bullbuster to the island, right?
Oh, okay.
But,
he's the boat driver then.
Yes. And basically his actions almost get himself killed if it weren't for, like, the intervention of the other characters. And I wouldn't really say there's a resolution. It's not like he realizes he was wrong, but more he kind of just realizes, oh, I have to play along with this to a certain extent, like
Right, and everyone else learns they have to accept his quirks because he is in his own way working for the betterment of the company,
right,
and whatnot.
And he does have a boating license.
Mm-hmm. He does
that
indeed.
too. Can't forget that. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's we'll watch the. I mean, we're gonna keep watching this because what the fuck? I mean, whatever, man. Like this thing is it's a 12-episode show. We're like 8.
Oh, you're committed now.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. You're like at episode 9 or 10 or something at this point.
Yeah, like who the fuck hits the eject button at that point, right?
So can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
Like, what if you took out some of like the procedural office stuff and say maybe inserted some social commentary on the Japanese constitution?
Well, you want this anime to have something to say about Article 9? Is that what you're...
I'm just saying that it could be a rich, untapped vein of drama for robots to talk about.
Of course.
Yeah, no mecha anime has ever done that before.
Yep.
I loved Reconquista in G.
Well,
no, don't be silly. That was about toilets.
The thing that, so in all seriousness, I do think like it's not that like I don't think Bullbuster was an unsalvageable premise. I just think where it has decided to put its priorities feels deeply misplaced.
When the joke is look at how boring everything is, you really have to be pretty good to walk that line.
So that's kind of like I kind of touched on this last time. We had a commenter mention this as well, where like the show feels to me more like than anything an office comedy.
Yes.
Like, and that's fine. I love office comedies, but it's not a good office comedy.
That is the issue.
It's like a average at best office comedy.
Right.
And
if this thing were like really funny, like I'm talking like let's just say like Kaguya tier, like hilarious.
Right. Name your favorite comedy funny. Yes.
Yes. I could forgive like the mech doing fucking jack shit. The problem is it's not even that good of an office comedy, and the mech is boring.
I will say, like, weirdly enough, if as crappy as the CG is on the mechs and the monsters, like a lot of the 2D character animation is really fun and expressive. Yeah.
Yeah, we can't forget that this is Studio Nut.
Yes.
The studio behind Decadence.
Fully
Yabai.
Fully Yabai.
So yeah, like the character sections are like quite good, like very energetic actually, in a way that Bullbuster and the Kaiju are not.
Yeah,
and
I mean that's kind of just confirmation that two entirely separate teams are working on this stuff, right?
Probably, yeah. And
there's a one joke that like it's not necessarily that it was a really good joke, but it's a joke that made me go, "That's a joke that would be in a Western cartoon." Is like, dude, piloting Bullbuster is like flashing, but he's like, my life is flashing before my eyes or whatever, and then later is like, or like right after is like, oh wait, I remembered the thing that
I think I did see that,
right? And so it goes back and he's like, well, no, that's back too far, you rewinded too far. Forward, right?
No, when I said it was like, I didn't say it was a bad comedy. I said it was like an average, like okay, and there are some like good jokes here and there, but overall it's like fine.
Yeah,
it's only fine.
And need more than that at this point. So
look on the bright side. It seems like we are building up to building the Getter 3 of the Bull trio. We're gonna get Bull Diver soon to explore the watery depths of the lake on the islands.
Well, I'm confident.
I can't wait till the office crew is joined by a serial killer. That'll be great.
I feel confident that they are not going to combine at any point. I don't think that technology exists in this world.
The only way they would combine is all of them get busted up somehow, and then they have to
take the parts and use them back together. Yeah. All right. Sorry, Bullbuster. You tried. Well, I was going to say moving on to something better, but I don't think I can necessarily say that.
Well. Speaking of effort or lack thereof,
Ninja.
Yeah, let's talk about Under Ninja.
Mhm.
I'm mad now because
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I felt like we were building up something
Mm.
like the past. So out of the I don't know what the episodes numbers are at this point, but the out of the past like 3 episodes, the previous 2, like with Kuro infiltrating high school, were pretty fun. Like that was probably the most fun I've had with the show so far.
Right.
And and the first of these 2 episodes, because it's just kind of continuing that same stuff that we talked about last time. But then the latest episode, we're back to dropping in into another plot line, timeline, whatever, more new characters.
Yes. The
I don't. Does
ninjas.
Kuro even show up in this episode?
He does
It
not.
does not, notably.
There's some, other crazy ninja guy who's murdering the other ninjas, or is he an under ninja? I don't know. They don't really explain that either. What I almost lost my mind when they did another 1 month ago cut
Yeah.
Another flashback. Yeah.
in a different, but we're like in a different plot line now. So they don't tell you what the day. They didn't even tell you what the day was on that one. I have no idea what point in time we're at or what's and God, it's like why are we doing this to ourselves? Like,
because non-linear storytelling is cool.
I cannot whatever. Like I cannot necessarily speak to the reasoning behind the directing choices of the Under Ninja anime. I will say that like the flashback that happens in the latest episode to their days in ninja high school is like
That is pretty funny.
Is A, very funny, but B,
yes.
one of the only actual flashbacks in the original source material.
Okay, so that's not necessarily added for the anime, just the timing of it felt bad.
Yeah, it just feels more gratuitous because of the way the story has been directed up till this point.
Yeah.
So
that's the thing, though. Yes, I also thought that flashback was great, but it's like, and those are the kind of things that are like keeping me watching because I feel like the content I like. But the way it has been chopped up is so frustrating to me. Like, it's hard to follow. We're not getting enough time to like be with the characters and get to know them, and like, and the stretch where we were, that was my favorite part so far.
It kind of feels like you're scrabbling for like pieces of good, like isolated good stuff that just never links together in a in a smooth.
It kind of does. Like, it's not really that complicated of a plot, but it's just frustrating when things that we saw in episode 1 we have not come back to. Like, there's
and I will say this is a real and legitimate criticism of Kengo Hanazawa's writing is that it is very meandering. Like, it's not unique to just Under Ninja. You can read I Am a Hero or Boys on the Run or really any of his manga about, neat incel losers is like, there's always a meandering quality to his storylines. Like, I have definitely read his past works and sometimes been like frustratedly trying to grasp at a like emotional core to hold on to. Like, and it's kind of just, and I think it's like, for Under Ninja, it's like specifically because unlike some of his past works, it leans more into the like comedy angle. It does not bother me as much that like it is jumping around because it's like they're not really meant to take the story that seriously to begin with. So
I think certainly for the written works as well, there's a deliberate stylistic choice there in that it kind of that storytelling style kind of fits the vibe of his sort of like slacker nihilistic protagonists as well. It feels bitty and unfocused because the characters he is writing about are bitty and unfocused.
But G, you've mentioned like the anime is like even more cut up and all over the place, though, right?
Yes. Like at least the Under Ninja manga follows a mostly linear, narrative styling. But
whereas I think we're now jumping into 4 different time periods in every episode or something, right?
I mean, I think. On some level, I think the core thing really the only thing you really need to take away from like the latest episode is like, ninja. We're on the verge of ninja civil war, and that all of the plot lines are basically building up to a great. The idea is that the new front lines of the next great ninja war are here in Japan.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Like, this is why we're bringing our troops back, like despite the implication being that you're not supposed to have like Spec Ops ninjas in the Japanese mainland, right? Like,
right.
This is why we have to take in the dick slicing foreigner.
Yes,
Gotta mention him once.
Thank you, because he is not actually present in these episodes.
Because he does not appear in these episodes. Yeah.
Like the idea is that everybody, whether intentionally, knowingly or not, is gearing up, right, for a conflict, right? Like, and there's this implication that it is all going to happen at the school, right? Like, the school is implied to be a hotbed of under ninja activity, right? The serial killer ninja who is targeting what seems to be mostly, female ninja, says to, face him again at the school. It is sort of
like janitor or whatever at the school is some like old like turncoat ninja or something, right?
Yes, as they say, the ninja are preparing to use escape their orbital laser that was introduced this episode.
Guys, see that the show is funny, and I mean, I guess much like Migi and Dali, there's a very dry.
Yes, it's very dry.
Extremely dry sense of humor. Like, these are not laugh out loud jokes.
That's compelling because we don't get a lot of dry humor in anime most of the time.
These are like writing on the absurdity of the ninjas having an orbital laser. They don't go into detail or anything. It's just like, that is ridiculous that they have an orbital laser.
Ninjas would have an orbital laser.
And I think it's why the actual flashback in the manga is legitimately a very good, funny flashback where they do the flashback to Ninja High School. And they don't
they show the yearbook and everybody has the masks on.
Everybody has the masks on.
And you're how are you supposed to tell anybody apart?
Yeah, right. They're looking at their yearbook, the absurdity that Ninja High School had a ninja yearbook.
That's just a really good joke.
That's a very good joke.
It's really funny. And they don't linger on it too much. They don't belabor the joke.
Right, nobody's laughing in the show about this.
No, it's a sight gag, right?
Yeah, it's completely a sight gag, yeah.
Oh, man. The dude, inventing his fucking cat language, and it'd be like, hey, didn't we go to Ninja High School together? It's like...
Yeah, and yes, and they threw that in there
because I invented the cat language.
Yeah.
I think it would be funnier if that was just coincidence that they put him in a cat and they didn't even know anything about the cat language. But
I think it was a coincidence.
Which is even funnier.
It's just
because it's like conveniently now he can talk to his friend, right?
Yeah.
So the humor is good. Like there's the meat of the content. I like, and that's why I was still here. So
yes,
maybe the way it's being arranged,
and just the way it's being arranged and presented it's like frustrating sometimes. So
yeah, but I am enjoying it despite everything.
Yeah, I think it's still a net positive for me,
and
at least I get to hear the OP every week. I love the OP.
Yeah,
it's a good OP.
OP
is a real banger. I haven't said that in a while. I feel like I need to remind everyone. So, so yeah. I have no idea. Like, we're running out of episodes here, so I don't know I don't know how any of this is going to come to any kind of.
It is still going. Yes.
Okay.
I feel pretty strongly. I know where the anime is going to end, though. So.
I don't feel like we're any closer to some kind of stopping point than we were from episode 1 right now. Unless we're, I don't know, do we stop at the beginning of the Ninja War? I don't know, whatever. But we'll see.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So now that we are watching Pluto, I put it in our honored end of the show position.
Yeah.
I think this is if it's not Spy Family, this is the safest bet to watch, I think. But
hey guys, do you want to talk about the Iraq War?
Okay, so let me start, because you all read the manga, and none of this is shocking to you. I have
to you, yeah. Oh man,
I was not prepared for how
Not
unsubtle
for six.
how unsubtle the show is, primarily with the 39th Central Asian War, but just in general. I did not expect to see, maybe I did expect to see
Ferengi clip.
maybe I did expect to see the robot KKK, but I did not expect to see Saddam Hussein and like how just like completely like not it's the opposite of subtle. They want you to know that they were talking about 2003.
Yes.
To be fair, if
post 9/11
Urasawa
war
was
on
trying,
terror. Yeah.
if Urasawa was trying to homage Tezuka, he's done it pretty well because
By having zero subtlety whatsoever.
Yes.
The opposite of subtlety.
It is actually the perfect homage to Tezuka's style of writing.
It's the complete opposite of subtlety. They're like, yes, we were told that there were robots of mass destruction, but it turned out there were no robots of mass destruction.
Got Astro Boy waving in his fatigues from the top of a tank.
Yeah.
Like,
it's very... I mean, I love it, right? Because like it's the perfect like. Of course, Astro Boy was in Iraq. Of course he was, right? Because he was one of the 7 strongest robots on the Earth.
Yeah, of course.
Of course, he would have been deployed by the military. But also, he is still Astro Boy. Like, we cannot afford the optics failure of having Astro Boy slaughter robots in the streets, so we'll put him in a nice, cushy PR position.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Mont Blanc,
and again, like
Mont
Blanc over here is like, is this a just war? Did I come here for the right reason?
Yeah.
I am drowning in the blood of robots.
And it's like
officially has the highest kill count of all of the world's strongest robots.
And it's like
dungarees.
It's so impressive to me because we have 20 years of space away from this now. This was like a year or two after 9/11 or like it's like
yes.
Yeah, I mean
it's like well within the rah-rah period.
Yeah, they were like making this as these things were happening, right? Like so
like in a world with a more globalized media, like to people who were not like alive or cognizant in 2001, like it truly cannot be overstated how much the United States and maybe the Western world as a whole sort of went through a collective insanity post 9/11. And
this would have got banned in the US if it was being published.
Pluto, if there were enough Republican senators to pay attention,
yes,
Pluto would have been banned in America.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I mean, to be clear, the freedom fries thing is not a joke or something that people have made up.
No, that was a real
happened.
That was a real thing. Yeah. So this, yes, at that time, yes. If enough people noticed, this would have been banned in when it came out in the United States. So yeah. That aside.
I think one of the fascinating things about Pluto is this sort of weird collision of like Smash Mouth, serious political criticism, and also the inherent nature of the story as a piece of like Tezuka fantasy where everything is goofy and like no holds are barred in terms of how silly the concepts can be, right? Like that's one of the most fascinating things about Pluto to me is how uncomfortably these elements sit alongside each other.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Well, as the person who is new to this, Jill, so did you watched episodes 2 and 3, right?
I did watch both episode 2 and 3. Yep. So we had.
What are your kind of feelings about the development of the mystery and the introduction of the world?
I'll expand my lack of subtlety comment to the plot as well, which is also kind of less surprising, but still kind of surprising to me because, like, I don't know when we get when we get the Brando episode and he's like, I sure love all these kids and I'm going to take you all to the zoo when I come back. I'm like, oh god,
yeah,
oh no.
Also, I'm 1 day from retirement.
Yes.
It's very, very unsubtle, which I'm not saying as a criticism. I'm just saying it's kind of, in a way, it was almost kind of funny to me.
It was a work, brother. Brando had him dead to rights. Brando had him down for the 3 count. He should have won.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying all of it. Like it's like the the plot is good, the themes are good. Like this, like we've talked about before. I feel this is the first time in a long time I feel like I'm watching an anime that has some weight to it.
Yeah.
And I'm very intrigued by now that we have all of the remaining 4 robots here. What's going to happen.
I definitely want to call out the introduction of Epsilon,
Right.
who is the pretty one.
Yeah.
Like, because like this is a thing that's sort of known about Urasawa's works, right? Is he draws very like, tired middle-aged men, right? Very
Yes.
lumpy old men, right? And as a result, like Monster, like Pluto, when Urasawa introduces a like traditionally Bishonen looking anime man,
Right.
that is almost Urasawa's way of being like, you need to pay attention now.
Yes, right. Yeah, no, he did. Yeah, like he flies in like the sun, right?
Yeah,
and,
like an angel from the heavens.
yeah,
And notably, yes, it's because Epsilon, of the 7 strongest robots, was also the only conscientious objector
right.
to the 39th Central Asian War, and explicitly did not participate in the war. And I think that needs to be pointed out because that proves every robot had a choice.
You might make an argument about Atom. He's a child.
Fair. Yes, fine. Well, this
is he?
You get into the weird aspects there, right?
Yeah, that's kind of the problem.
Yes. I do think that for me the highlight, and I think it's supposed to be the highlight, was the introduction of Pluto, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it's an iconic bit of design, and
the whole like using Adam's little sister. I can't think of her name right now, but Ron, yes. You'd think I would know that after 70 years of Astro Boy or whatever. But
I mean, Ron's like one of those like weirdly not talked about that much characters.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, she's role to Astro Boy's Mega Man. So,
yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Except arguably even less important, to be honest.
At least role like cleans up the shop or something, right? Anyway, using her as the viewpoint character just made the whole and again, I don't know anything, so I don't really even know what Pluto is at this point, other than because we only catch like a kind of glimpse of what he really is toward the end, but it made him so much more menacing.
Oh yeah,
like so much more like
Yes, Pluto's much scarier when he seems just like some kind of force of nature.
Yes. That's what Urasawa nails, right? Because the thing is that Pluto, his design is relatively true to the original Tezuka design, but Urasawa's like...
Which you can tell if you see him completely in silhouette. Like, there are definitely still some weirdly cartoony aspects to him. But
Urasawa does such a masterful job, and thus this anime also does a great job of, like, hiding him in the shadows, showing people's reaction to him, right? It creates it's a masterful like horror.
I think
I will say as well that like almost every adaptation of Astro Boy tends to play up like the monstrousness of Pluto because it is such an easy design just to tweak a little and make extremely intimidating.
The part where like it starts raining and the flowers start growing, and I'm like, why am I scared right now?
I
shouldn't be scared. There's like flowers and stuff, and I still don't know the answer to that question. But it's just like so.
Right? Like,
it's just so good. So
Urasawa's a master of building dread. Like,
oh yeah, man. 20th Century Boys got some real.
and just like moment. Because like from the moment that Uran finds the guy laying in the alley or whatever, your guard's automatically up, but at no point, I mean, in hindsight, it didn't appear at any point that she was actually in danger, but the whole time you were like completely on edge, like, all right, when is the switch gonna flip?
Yeah.
Right.
Or whatever.
It is framed similarly to like a scene in a thriller where like a child discovers the hiding place of the killer, right?
Or like a slasher movie almost.
Yeah.
And
but more artsy because there's flowers.
But I will also say, right, they also do a lot of work to, like, it may not all seem clear now because, that man was talking in a lot of nonsense, but, like, you can already feel because they do establish that one of Uran's rare power, right, is she possesses like the power of like super robot empathy, basically, right? Like she can
Right.
feel the emotions of others, right? And this is a good setup then to like sort of get a little bit of insight into who Pluto kind of is, right? Like he is someone, Pluto or whatever this like person, whatever like
Mm-hmm.
mirror or shade or sliver of Pluto this is implied to be, feels a great deal of pain, right? Torment. Like this is not a gleeful serial killer preying on his targets. This is someone who is driven by like a deep primordial fear more than anything else.
That's
And
so much more interesting than
Yes.
just I want to murder people.
Yeah.
and
When we get to the end of the season, Jal, you should read the original Astro Boy arc.
Okay.
With-
I am interested in that, but I feel like I want to watch
It's good
yeah.
in its own right, I
the
will say.
Pluto
But
first.
but
Yeah.
it's really funny to see that original form of it after you see, like you see how it's adapted Pluto.
Yeah.
And
Well-
what about how do you feel about some of the stuff that is beginning to build in like Geschicht and his backstory, right? Like there's sort of a mystery bubbling there as well.
Yeah.
I think
with
the implication is fairly obvious at this point, but
his like super gun that he arm and all that stuff. Yeah.
yeah, the implication that Geschicht has killed a person, basically.
Right. Yeah. I mean, one of the questions I thought of immediately when they were like, "Oh, nobody's killed since the guy who's pinned to the underground,
Yeah.
whatever." Like, as
Wow.
far as everybody knows, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, that's always the trick with.
yeah, that was like the
Predator,
first thing I thought. So yeah, when they started implying that with Geschicht, I'm like, oh, and his memories being erased, and maybe him maybe having something in his past. Yeah, it's all very good.
I will say that, like, and this is more kind of like a big picture thing than an observation on these episodes, but I do think Pluto is one of the more effective whodunits if you're going in without. It's fairly difficult to guess the culprit, and there are reasons for part of that. But
yeah.
But I will say that, like, if you enjoy puzzling over who done it, then you're going to have a pretty fiendish puzzle in front.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there are implications, but I would not be able to tell you what's happening right now. I mean,
you might also feel that way even after you find out who did it.
That's fine too.
Yeah, I mean, like,
I'm fine with that when done correctly.
I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but like,
look, we still got 4 more robots for Pluto to kill.
Yeah.
So, I have a question for you guys as the manga readers to kind of flip this around. I of course have not read the manga, but I get the impression this is a very straightforward adaptation. Is that correct? Like, that's what it feels like to me, with no other guessing.
I would say so. Yeah.
I would say so, yes.
Making any, like, I feel like some of these scenes feel like manga panels.
Yeah,
like,
I've not seen any particular liberties thus far.
Yeah.
The original story. Oh, no, go on, Ira.
They've moved a couple things around for the sake of like pacing it as anime, but like that's only just like this scene has been moved here.
Right. Like the only notable shift I can think of is in the manga, Brando's human form is not introduced until after the introduction of the robot form. And so, because up to that point,
it seem for a sec, like Geschicht walks in and is like talking to Brando, and it seems for a moment that Brando still looks like he did in the original, and he is this
the
wacky
big
round
robot,
fighting bot, just hooked up to his repair stuff.
Right.
But
it's a fun visual gag.
Brando steps out from behind it.
The thing else,
oh, go ahead.
No, the thing I was going to say is that, like most mystery stories, most whodunits, there's a limited amount you can do to change the narrative, because it's important that all the pieces plug into the right places, right? So inherently, you have a bit less flexibility with this kind of.
It's not like you can just start cutting stuff out, right? 'Cause,
Exactly.
Right.
It's usually important to the mystery, right?
Yeah.
The only thing I will really say, speaking to the adaptation as an adaptation, is, I think at the end of the day, it is always going to be a little bit difficult to match the type of impact that black and white manga art is capable of. Right.
Yeah.
The abilities to use sheer whites and blacks to create like stark imagery.
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot. I mean, it's been a while, but like I think it was like with Promised Neverland, we were talking about that. How there's
right.
It's a mood that you just can't quite.
It's difficult
recreate.
to match, and I think I think the Pluto adaptation is well made. I think it is very competently done. I think some of the hardest hitting scenes still, I mean, again, this could just be bias, right? The manga versions of those events still hit harder for me, but I think that the anime is doing a pretty admirable job of trying to supplement that with motion and music and sound. So,
I think that it's especially marked in this case because Urasawa is such a visual storyteller, right? Like he takes full advantage of the medium to deliver very dramatic use of light, shadow, framing, blocking and all that kind of thing. So inherently, I think that you're going to lose some of the impact of some of those frames just because you have to show how we get from point A to point B. Right. Like it's understandable, but still there. Really.
Yeah, I guess it's like, I mean, is there anything you think they could do to improve it? I mean, at some point, it is just
it's
a
intrinsic to the
medium. Yeah.
Yeah. What if Blackjack were there?
He kind of was, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was
for like a second.
Yes, for a second.
Well, so yeah,
it's a great story.
I'm really enjoying it. I feel like it's living up to my expectations, which were pretty high on it. And I mean, to me, I even not having read the manga, I based on the like universal praise I've seen for it, like I was expecting the story to be good, and the question was, was the adaptation to be good? And I mean, like I said, to me, from the outside looking in, my guess is it feels like it's very straightforward, but it doesn't seem like they needed to change much. Yeah. So there wasn't really much you would want them to change.
There's no need to futz with something which works perfectly.
So, yeah, I'm really enjoying it. This could be a contender, is what I'm saying.
Unless, of course, somebody were to secretly murder it.
Yeah, well, on that note. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that will do it for this episode then. You can do our housekeeping. You can check us out at theglorioblog.com. You can follow us on Twitter at glorioblog or co-hosts at glorio. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Amazon Music, Podbean, Stitcher, or of course YouTube, where you can like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell. Tell us we're right or wrong on these shows. I mean, we're right, but you can share your opinion,
even when we're wrong.
And of course, tell your friends, tell your enemies, and we'll catch everybody next time.
Peace.